This time we'll call the special meeting of the Civil Service Commission for Friday, April 25th, 2025 to order at 5:31. Will everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Want your history lesson? Okay, in 1953, American innovation, we learned about DNA, Lex, all those studies published today in 1953. Talk about boring reading. American innovation. That in mind, having a country move. Right hand over. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice.
Everybody. At this time, we have public comment. This time is made available for comments from the public on matters within the Civil Service Commission's jurisdiction that are not on the agenda. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. Do we have any? No. We have the same crowd we've had for the last 3 nights.
They love us.
Do we have anybody online?
Not online to make a comment.
Okay. So then we'll go on to regular business and we'll reopen this hearing. And I forgot already where we were at. You had finished your last witness, counsel?
Yes, yeah. So the county would call its next witness if we're ready.
Say that name again, please.
Oh, I just said the county would call its next witness if you are ready.
We are ready.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
It's going to be Matt Watson,
Okay.
and he's actually going to be testifying remotely. He's out of state currently.
Okay, Mr. Watson. You solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you are about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Okay,
Ready?
proceed.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Chief Watson. How are you?
Good. And I apologize for not being in person. This was a planned trip with my dad and uncle and cousin.
No apologies necessary. Are you currently employed?
I'm employed by a Canadian company, no longer with the state of California nor Madera County.
Okay. And you stated no longer with Madera County. Were you previously employed by Madera County or with Madera County?
In Madera County via a contract with CAL FIRE.
And what was your position?
The chief of Madera, my rank would have been assistant chief.
Okay. And how long did you serve in that position?
From 2018 until February of 2023.
Okay. What were your general duties in that position?
I oversaw the CAL FIRE operations within Madera County Fire, which would have been the state resources, Madera County Fire, Madera City Fire. So in total, it was 351 employees, 23 fire stations, and a budget of about $30 million between the state, county, and city.
Okay. And you mentioned the budget. Did you have budgetary responsibilities with respect to the Madera Fire Department?
I did. As the chief assigned via the contract, I was the department head for Madera County Fire.
Okay. Thank you. In your position as the assistant chief of the Madera County Fire Department, I believe that's the correct term. I apologize. In that position, were you responsible for overseeing the work of the fire master mechanics?
I was. I supervised Ryan Knoll, and he gave general direction under my supervision.
Okay, thank you. And if you recall, what were the general duties of the master mechanics?
General duties of the master mechanic were to work on fire engines, upfit new fire engines, put them in service, take fire engines out of service, and when they're no longer useful, their service life had ran out, and to keep that equipment in emergency response readiness.
Okay, thank you. Did you ever see the work of parts assistants?
That would have been under my command or my direct supervision through Ryan Knoll.
Okay, and what are the general duties of the parts assistant?
Parts assistant would be a employee that was there as a support service, and they were to keep parts on hand, run parts when necessary during the normal workday, and wash vehicles, help keep the shop clean. It was a new position we added. We wanted to try to add some more support functions to the fire department to make the mechanics more readily available to work on the fire engines. And so that's the basic, the parts assistant was a support function to the mechanics and the fleet manager.
Okay. And within the chain of command, where would you say that the parts assistant position would land?
It would be under that fleet manager, which reported directly to me.
Okay, thank you. Are you familiar with the concept of an employee being on standby?
Yes.
And what does that mean to you?
Standby would be mandatory response within a certain set amount of time. Being unable to do things outside of their normal work hours. They'd be able to do things outside their normal work hours as long as they were available for emergency response.
Okay. And when you were the assistant fire chief, were there any positions in the Madera County Fire Department that were ever placed on standby?
There was never any support function.
Objection. I think my microphone is on now. Vague and ambiguous as to what placed, I believe you said placed on standby. I don't know what that means. And who is placing them?
Are we going to get to that description?
Yeah, well, I believe that the witness was answering that.
Okay, I'm going to overrule it.
Yeah, as the department head, if there anybody been put on standby, that would have gone through me, and I would have worked with the county administrative officer to work through that process. There was no county employees on standby. We had emergency responders, such as a battalion chief that was assigned for 24 hours a day, and the fire engines that were on duty, those personnel would have been, outside of normal work hours, the only employees within county fire on standby.
Okay. And with respect to those employees who were on standby that you were just testifying about, were there any restrictions on what those employees were able to do while they were assigned standby?
Restrictions to the emergency response personnel, like the firefighters?
Yeah, I apologize. That wasn't a great question. Were there any restrictions on what they could do during their after hours time?
If you're talking about non-emergency responders, such as the mechanics, then there was no one on standby for the county.
And with those employees who were on standby, you testified that there were employees on standby. Were there restrictions on their time or on what they could do outside of normal working hours?
Those would have been the firefighters, the engineers, the fire captains, the battalion chief. Those folks would have been assigned to a fire station, sleeping at a fire station, and then doing their normal work duties. But those would have been the only standby employees we had. Even our paid call firefighters were not on standby. They were available based on response.
Okay, thank you. So during your tenure as the fire chief, were the fire master mechanics ever assigned standby?
Never.
To your knowledge, was there any reason to require the mechanics to be on standby?
There was never a reason. I never saw a reason. There was no justification for me to make the argument to provide them standby. It was always an optional issue for them.
And when you say there was no justification for it, can you explain a little bit about what would not justify them being on standby?
The frequency of any breakdowns on the fire apparatus. There was not really a need for that. When I became the chief of Madera County made great strides in improving the fire service, not only the operations within the fleet management and the shop, but also on our response engines. Our engines were adequate when I first came in there prior to any of these employees being assigned to the shop. And these apparatus became much more complex, much heavier as far as what you can do with them. You can't tow them with a normal tow truck. So if these engines broke down, it was usually a computer issue, and that required a tow truck. And those tow trucks were called with our from our 911 dispatchers. Someone I think talked about in the night I was there, ECC, Emergency Command Center. And those Emergency Command Center dispatch operators would call a tow truck when needed, all facilitated through the on-duty battalion chief.
Okay, thank you. Were the parts assistants ever placed on standby while you were the fire chief?
There would never be a need for a parts assistant on standby.
And what is the reason for that?
That's a, I don't mean any offense to anybody, a lower level employee that's would require them to keep stock on hand and go shag or get parts during the normal work hours. Our battalion chiefs all had county cal cards, so if there was an emergency purchase, that they would be able to make that purchase with their cal card, and that's part of the duties of that battalion chief.
Okay, so there has been testimony in this hearing that, well, actually, strike that. Are you familiar with an individual named Ashley Diaz?
I'm familiar with everyone that worked in the shop. The fire service is a family organization, and I'm very familiar with Ashley on duty and off duty.
And what was how do you know Ms. Diaz?
The finance manager for the county fire department was one of Ashley's good friends, and that's who brought her into employment prior to Ryan Knoll taking over the fleet manager position.
Okay, and what was Ms. Diaz's position in the fire shop?
She was a part-time employee, which I fought for that position with the Board of Supervisors to make her permanent as a parts assistant.
Okay. So there's been testimony in this hearing that Ms. Diaz was the only one who was able to buy parts for the fire shop. Is it your understanding that that is a true statement?
That is not a factual statement. When I was a battalion chief in Madera County, I would frequently pick up parts. We have accounts throughout the county, and again, the cal cards, I can make those purchases with a county cal card.
Mentioned cal cards. What who all has cal cards within the fire department?
All the battalion chiefs and Ryan Knoll.
Okay. And can everybody who has a cal card purchase parts for the related to the fire shop or related to the fire department?
Yes, they can make purchases related, anything within our budget in the fire department. Within county policy, they can utilize that cal card, which is a Visa card. They can utilize that for purchases.
And does that include purchases after hours, after normal work
Correct.
hours?
Yes.
Okay. So there was some testimony regarding Ms. Diaz, excuse me, being the only one who was able to purchase windshield wipers after hours. Would the cal cards be able to be used for that purpose?
The cal cards could be used, but actually, if you're breaking it down that far to the windshield wipers, the diesel exhaust fluid, the DEF, is the county fire engines all carried 3 credit cards. Some of them carried 4. One was a Shell, one was a Chevron, one was the WEX card. The WEX card, you could make additional purchases outside. All of them, you could purchase fuel, automotive parts, and the WEX card actually allowed for service also. So there was multiple ways outside of a parts assistant to purchase windshield wipers, DEF, diesel fuel, gasoline. The only thing you weren't allowed to purchase was personal items with those 3 different type of fuel cards. The fourth fuel card would have been a card lock, which was limited to locations such as Oakhurst and the city of Madera.
Okay. And the ability to make those purchases with those various cards, that would include outside of normal working hours. Is that right?
Correct. Outside of normal working hours, anyone driving a fire engine that had access to that card, even down to the paid call firefighter would have been able to make those purchases.
Okay.
And I also believe it was O'Reilly we had an account with, and O'Reilly would make deliveries to any fire station within the county.
Okay, thank you. Are you familiar with the process for purchasing parts for the fire department using POs or purchase orders?
Yes, so a purchase order would be a planned event. And basically Ashley Diaz or Ryan would be able to enter a purchase order. And that purchase order would come to the department head for approval. I would approve that. And then the auditor's office it would take them 3 days to process that. So that wasn't anything outside of, that was normal workdays stuff. That wasn't anything outside of after hours. If you put a purchase order, say on a Friday at 5 p.m., I would not see it as the department head till Monday. And then I would approve it on a Monday. And then the auditor's office would have 3 days to make that approval. So as soon as you would see the purchase order back would have been probably on a Thursday, if not a Friday.
Okay, so given that, would you use a purchase order for making an emergency after hours purchase?
Negative. That is the reason that we established the Visa Cal cards is for emergency purchases. And maybe to give a better example is I had a Madera County strike team in my previous role as a battalion chief. We were right on the Oregon border and one of the county fire engines broke down. I, as the battalion chief, went into Oregon to get the parts and I utilized that Cal card to make that purchase.
Okay, thank you. You've already established that you're familiar with all of the grievance in this hearing, Mr. Minnick, Mr. Witten, and Ms. Diaz. And I'd like to ask you some questions, just focusing on the two master mechanic grievance, Mr. Minnick and Mr. Witten. Did their job duties when you were the fire chief include receiving work-related after-hours calls?
Did their work, no, what was the question? I'm sorry.
Did their job duties include receiving work-related after-hours calls?
They may receive work-related calls after hours, but they were not required to answer the phone.
Okay, what do you mean by that they were not required to answer the phone? What would happen if they got a call and they just decided to not answer it?
There was nothing that happened. I was, I think, a very fair supervisor, and I used progressive discipline in the manner it was intended to use. If an employee was failing in their job, I would do a PIP, employee improvement plan, and or progressive discipline. And if the employees in the shop would have had, if there was an issue, they would have had a PIP or had been written up. There was no progressive discipline ever taken because it was never a requirement for them to answer their phone nor to respond.
So would, you mentioned the PIP, the Performance Improvement Plan. If, say, Mr. Minnick habitually failed to answer his phone, would he have been placed on a PIP?
If that would have been a job requirement, then he would have been placed on a PIP.
Was it a job requirement for him to answer his phone?
It was not a job outside of normal work hours. It was not a requirement for him to answer his phone.
Okay, thank you. And then the same for Mr. Witten?
Correct.
Okay. What if one of them, because they are both master mechanics, so what if one of them answered the call and said, I can't go out because I'm at the movies and I don't want to leave? Would there have been any disciplinary action for that?
There would not have been. There are basically three of them. I know Ryan Knowles, a supervisor, but he was a master mechanic prior to that. Is typically the phone call will go to Ryan Knoll. And then if one of the mechanics was available and chose to respond, then they would have that opportunity to respond. And, you know, there was times Ryan would come out and the mechanic, because the mechanics weren't available, there was times nobody was available. And it was just that the dispatcher would call a tow truck if we were unable to get the vehicle back to the fire station for repairs.
So I just want to break down a little bit about what you just said. So you said that if nobody was available, if none of the mechanics and Ryan was available, then a tow truck would be called?
Yeah, and so I mean, I was very diligent with the county budget, and I would review any bill that came through, because I wanted to make sure the funds were being used in a justifiable manner. And on those tow bills would have on the bill who called for that tow truck. And I'm positive, and based on my memory, is those tow trucks most of the time were called from our dispatch center, our ECC, because it would say that Mariposa Command Center with the dispatcher's name on it. So most of the time, those tow trucks, when responded, the call was placed by our dispatchers.
Okay. Thank you. Are you aware of any schedule for who among the mechanics might receive an after hours call?
Are you talking about the calendar that was created?
Okay, so you're aware of a calendar that established who might receive an after hours call?
Yes, Jeremy and Roy requested a calendar to see, they wanted to know who would be called first on a rotational basis. And Ryan called and asked me about a calendar. I go, if they want a calendar, make them a calendar. But I reminded them the only thing that calendar was for was to who was called first. If that person was unavailable, go to the next number. That person's unavailable, go to Ryan. So basically it was a phone rotation list. There was no mandatory anything with that list. The employees requested a list. We were trying to support the employees.
So hypothetically, if Mr. Witten's name was on the day and he received a call, was he required to take the call?
No, he didn't even have to answer the phone. If he didn't answer the phone, we went to the next phone number.
Okay, so did the implementation of the calendar change how these after hours calls were viewed by you as a fire chief?
It did not. And a lot of the times our dispatch, our ECC, the Emergency Command Center, would make the calls, and they would just randomly call the phone numbers in the order of their radio numbers: repair 601, repair 602, repair 603. They didn't look at a calendar. They're dispatching for 3 different counties, and all they do is go through a phone list. So that even though there was a calendar that we made up at the request of the employees, is that calendar was just a rotation of calls. If, one of the battalion chiefs might have access to that, the dispatchers had too many things to look at. All they did is call in the order of the phone number. 601 was Ryan, 602 was Roy, 603 was Jeremy. They just called in that order of rotation.
Okay, thank you. Are you familiar with the practice of the Madera County Fire Department where mechanics were provided with a county vehicle to take home?
Yes, that was a past practice prior to me starting as a battalion chief in Madera County in 2012. And it goes back as far as I can remember as my time in Mariposa and Merced counties. And the mechanics were provided a vehicle to their benefit to drive to and from work, to save them time if they were going to a fire station the next morning, or they went out to a call, and it saved them time instead of driving back to the shop, them being able to go directly home.
To your knowledge and how you applied that policy when you were the fire chief, was that policy related in any way to whether the mechanics were on standby during after hours?
No, let's say that one more time. I'm sorry.
So how you applied that policy when you were the fire chief, did their receipt or their ability to take those vehicles home relate in any way to whether they were on standby?
No, it did not. It was not a requirement of standby, nor were they required to be on standby.
Okay. Did you ever tell Roy or Mr. Witten or Mr. Minnick that they were receiving those vehicles or able to take those vehicles home in lieu of receiving standby?
I'd never talked about in lieu of.
Okay. What did you talk about with them with respect to those vehicles?
Basically, the vehicles were to, if they got a call and they were available to come back to work, utilize that call to come back to work. If they were driving into work, then we would call them and say, example, Roy lives in Chowchilla. If Station 2, which is in Chowchilla, there's an issue there versus him driving to Madera back to Chowchilla, call him on his way to work, ask him to stop by that station and take a look at the issue with the fire engine.
Okay, thank you. The way that you applied that policy, the ability for Mr. Menick and Mr. Witten to take home the county vehicle, was their ability to take the vehicle home, did that change their ability to reject after hours calls like you testified about earlier?
It did not. It was an optional thing. There was basically 3 people that could work on fire engines, both the master mechanics and the supervisor. And if they weren't available, we went to the next one. Same thing I testified earlier. And if none of them were available, we'd call a tow truck. And then the other thing, I mean, there was times that it might be a basic issue with a fire engine. It might take it out of emergency response, but would still allow that vehicle to drive back to the fire station. And part of the plan for the fire department, as an organized fire department, is we have relief vehicles. So just because that frontline fire engine is out of service does not stop that fire station from functioning. We can go get a relief fire engine at multiple stations. A lot of the stations have more than one fire engine at them.
Okay, thank you. Now turning to Ms. Diaz, you've testified regarding the parts assistant position in general, but specific to Ms. Diaz, did her job duties when you were the fire chief require her to take after hours calls?
It would have never required her, nor even that position, to take after hours calls.
Okay. And what about responding to the field for some reason after hours?
There's nothing a parts assistant can do in the field that the person on the fire engine couldn't do.
Okay. Did you ever tell her that she had to respond to after hours calls?
Never.
Okay. Did you ever tell her that you expected her to be on standby, ready to respond to the field at a moment's notice?
Ever.
Did you ever tell Mr. Menick that you expected him to respond to after hours calls?
Never.
Did you ever tell Mr. Witten that you expected him to respond to after hours calls?
Never.
Okay. Did Mr. Menick, Mr. Witten, or Ms. Diaz ever ask you about standby pay?
Yes, Ryan Knoll called me, and I don't mean to be vague, but it would have been October of 2022. Is Ryan called and said that they wanted Roy and Jeremy requested to speak to me about standby pay. So I left the Madera County headquarters fire at 4th Street and drove down to the shop to have a discussion with them.
Okay. And what happened during that discussion?
I explained exactly what standby meant based on my understanding of the MOU. That would require them to be available and be on call versus what they were doing currently, which was just taking the vehicle home and being available if they were available. I asked them, before you make that decision, I will go to the county administrator. Well, once you make that decision, I'll go to the county administrator to work that out budgetarily to make sure it fit in the confines of the fire department budget. But I explained to them, again, this is going to become, if you're on standby, that now requires you to be available to the fire department when you're on standby. But that also means that you won't be able to take the vehicle home any longer because there's no longer a need or a benefit to the county if we're paying you standby. And I asked them to make sure that was what they wanted before I went forward with the process. I asked them to check with their union to get a better definition, to make sure my understanding of what standby was from their union, to make sure it met their intentions of what they wanted. So budgetarily, I ran the numbers, and if we paid standby versus them taking a vehicle home, to me, it would have been a wash. So I was willing to go to bat or fight for the employees if that's what their wish was. Later that day, Jeremy Witten came back to me and said he did not want to be placed on standby and he wanted to be able to take that vehicle to and from his home. Roy said he needed to think about it. And the next day, Roy made contact and said he did not want to be on standby and that he wanted to be able to, the ability to take that vehicle to and from his home for work. And neither one of them wanted to be on the mandatory callback. And the only other conversation out of that was with Roy is his only opposition to taking the vehicle home was that he goes to the gym, and that gym's on Robertson Boulevard. And he asked if he could take that gym from the shop to his gym and then to home, because he was late if he went home, switched vehicles. And I said, I live in Chowchilla. I totally understand your route of travel, and it's on his way to his home. And I had no issue with him. And I just told him that he needed to make sure that he had no civilian passengers in a county vehicle.
Okay, thank you. So there's been testimony in this hearing that there were times when the fire mechanics were being called out after hours, 2 to 3 times a night. In your experience as a fire chief, would those calls have been overtime?
Had they chosen?
Objection. Please let me state my objection. This person has no foundation to answer a question of when they're paid overtime. It's not clear to me that he pays them directly, that he has any approval over their timesheets, whether he determines whether it's overtime, straight time, standby. So
Since he's the one that has to go to the CAO to get approval for,
that's not what he has to do. He doesn't have to go to the CIO for approval for overtime.
then how does anybody get overtime? That's the case. He was in charge of the employees at the time. They're under his charge. So if somebody wants to get overtime, they're gonna have to go through him to get it approved.
If somebody works overtime, they get paid overtime. The county doesn't have an option to do that.
But
This
does
is
the
about standby pay, and that's what the CAO
question
allegedly
was
has to-
about overtime. I'm gonna overrule.
Thank you.
I'm
Chief
sorry, can you
Watson,
repeat?
yeah, I was just gonna say, do you need me to repeat that? There's been testimony that the fire master mechanics have or were at times called out 2 to 3 times a night, called back out to the field 2 to 3 times a night. My question to you is, based on your knowledge as the fire chief and your supervision of all of the employees in the fire department, would those calls have been, if they were after hours, would those calls have been overtime?
Well, first, I'd say that's a gross exaggeration, 2 to 3 times a night. And had they been called back and had they chosen to return to work or duty, they would have been paid overtime. And I do have the authority to approve overtime as a department head.
Okay. And so my question to you is, as the fire chief, would it make operational sense for your master mechanics to be working that much overtime?
Are you saying if it was factual, they returned to work 3 times a night to work that
Correct.
amount of time?
Correct.
If we were having that many problems with a fire apparatus, that fire apparatus would be out of service and we'd bring in a reserve fire engine that's readily available.
Okay, thank you. There's been testimony in this hearing regarding the idea, the implication that you would have retaliated against the grievance in this matter. And so my question to you is, over the course of your career, have you been involved in, have you had any involvement in union activity?
Yes, I've been a union member since 1994. Since 1999, I've been a union officer all the way up until 2024, both as a bargaining employee and as a supervisor, and also as a non-representative employee. So the process for an employee to go through this type of process, I totally support. And I've never retaliated against any employee in my 32 years in the fire service.
Okay,
I
thank
would
you.
object and move to strike that response regarding whether he retaliated against any employee. That's a legal conclusion, whether or not someone retaliated against somebody else. Also, that was not the question that was posed to this witness. And also, the question was leading regarding it's been testified that you retaliated against people. I will note again for the record that the grievance have been precluded from talking about any retaliation. And so it is prejudicial to us to then allow the county to respond to allegations of retaliation, bullying, harassment, which did occur and we have not been able to talk about.
I would definitely like to respond if I can.
Yes,
So
please.
there has been testimony that's been permitted related to implications about being afraid to raise concerns about the standby pay. One of the witnesses even testified that the timing of their complaint to HR or raising this to HR and to the union was because of Chief Watson's retirement. And there was essentially vague implications or vague statements about the possibility of retaliation. It is true that the county has objected to going down the rabbit trail of all of the personnel issues, but the commission and this hearing has there has been the introduction of evidence and testimony related to the implication that there was fear of Chief Watson, and that is why the issue wasn't raised before that. And then with respect to leading, I mean, it's possible, but this is an administrative hearing, and council has engaged in leading questions as well. So the rules of evidence are relaxed for a reason.
It's normal course from my experience with lawyers that you do lead. Everybody does. We do lead with some of our questions as well. So I don't have a problem with any of that happening. And because we did have the testimony and comments made early on in this process until it was stopped, we all agreed to not do that anymore. So it's out there. So that does open the door, in opinion, for some response from this witness.
And I mean, as council has just stated, our witnesses have only been allowed to make they have been allowed to vaguely state things about retaliation and bullying. We have not been able to provide any evidence or any concrete responses to that. But yet the county is being allowed to respond to our mentions of retaliation. At this point, this is seeming like an unfair process.
Hold on a minute. Yeah, what we're discussing here is that we have heard testimony from witnesses. They were afraid of retaliation and they were waiting until Mr. Watson had retired. So it kind of opens that door. To me, it allows him to either say he did or did not do such things. And at that point, I hope that's where this stops, because we stopped all the rest of it, so it should stop this. Is that fair?
Yep, that's the end of my questions.
Okay, so I'm going to overrule your objection for that reason.
Thank you. And I'm finished for now.
Okay, cross-examination.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Watson, you said that when you were the assistant chief over the county's fire department, you supervise, was that hundreds of employees? Is that correct?
Correct. Yes,
And was that number around the 300s or is it higher?
around the 300s, yes.
And those employees work across various different stations and work locations, is that right?
Yep, 23 stations within Madera County.
Okay. And where did you specifically work? Like, where did you report to work as the assistant chief?
As assistant chief, I would have reported to the building you're in, and also the shop location was our office prior to the Fourth Street location.
Okay. And as assistant chief, how many direct reports did you have below you at the time?
I would have had 6 people that directly reported underneath me.
Okay, so would you say that you directly supervise all around 300 county fire department employees that you mentioned?
They would have all been under my command and direction. Did I directly supervise them on a daily basis? No.
Okay, so were you familiar with all 300 or so employees' daily tasks and duties?
I would be familiar with all 351 employees' tasks and duties, yes.
Okay, did all 351 employees send you daily reports of all of the tasks and duties that were handled on that day?
I never required any employee to send me daily tasks.
Okay, then how were you aware of all 351 employees' daily tasks?
Because most of those employees, I work directly in those job descriptions as a firefighter, engineer, fire captain, battalion chief, and assistant chief. And I've overseen a fleet management shop since my time as a fire captain since 2001.
Okay, so you're saying that you have a general understanding of what all of the classifications and employees do. Is that right?
Objection
I would
misstates the testimony.
I'm asking him to clarify. I'm not stating his testimony.
Are you asking if I have a general understanding of
There's an
what?
objection.
Sorry, hold on, please.
Sorry, Mr. Fry.
What was your objection?
That the question misstates the testimony that the witness had given.
Okay. Can you ask your question again or differently, maybe possibly?
Okay, did you have a general understanding of what all employees in various classifications in the fire department did?
Do I understand how my department functioned? Yes.
Okay, in the time that you were assistant chief, did you know what Jeremy Witten did every single day that he reported to work?
Did I know what he did 8 hours a day, every day? No, but I was frequently at the shop multiple times a week. And I saw the production rates on what came in and out of that fleet shop. And I have expectations of each employee and each supervisor on what they're to do.
What is a production rate?
But a production rate But it depends what you're talking about. If you're talking about firefighters on the line in a wildland fire, it might be 66 chains per hour. If you're talking about someone in a shop, is I know how long it takes to change a water pump. I grew up on a farm. I worked on a ranch, and I spent some time as a mechanic. So I understand how long it takes to do basic duties for those assignments.
Okay, so during your time as assistant chief, did you know exactly what Roy Minnick did every day that he reported to work?
Do I know what his duties were? I knew what his
No,
duties were.
that's not the question. That is not the question. The question is, did you know what Roy Minnick did every single day that he reported to work?
I had 351 employees. I cannot follow every employee around for 8 hours a day.
Okay, so did you know what Ashley Diaz did every single day that she reported to work?
I knew what her job duties were. And again, I didn't watch her 8 hours a day.
So were you responsible for giving Jeremy, Roy, or Ashley their daily assignments?
My direction and expectations would have went to the fleet manager,
Who was that person?
Ryan Knoll.
Did Ryan Knoll have any ability to use his discretion to give assignments to Ashley, Jeremy, or Roy?
Can you clarify what an assignment is?
Whatever daily tasks that these three individuals are expected to complete during a workday.
If there was a fire engine broke down or a part that needed to be ordered during the workday, yes, Ryan would have been able to ask them to complete that assignment.
You testified regarding discipline and PIPs. Do you recall that testimony?
Correct.
So did you in your position as assistant chief have the ability to issue discipline to any of the 351 employees in the fire department?
Yes.
Okay. And did employees' direct supervisors also have the ability to issue discipline if necessary?
It depends which, are you referring to a county employee such as a non-emergency responder?
That's correct.
So if you're specifically talking about Ryan Knoll would not have been able to put them on a PIP or give them disciplinary action without direction from myself as the department head.
Okay. Would Ryan be able to recommend any sort of action that you take?
Ryan would
Regarding-
have, I'm sorry to cut you, I didn't mean to cut you off. Ryan would have came to me with any direct issues they would have been having as employees, and we would have discussed that. And if disciplinary action would have been necessary, then I would have given Ryan that direction.
Okay, as assistant chief, did you have set work hours?
Did I have set work hours? No, I was, my office hours were 8 to 5. I worked every day from about 7 a.m. to about 7 p.m. And visited fire stations outside my normal work hours. I went to the shop during my normal work hours. I was all around the county for meetings in the mountains, Madera Mountains, in Madera City, Madera County. So I was out and about a lot during the daytime hours.
Okay. And so if you stopped working on any given day at 7 p.m., were you still actively engaged in who was still working past 7 p.m. at the fire department?
Yes, as a assistant chief, I normally had duty coverage, which meant I oversaw any major events within Madera, Mariposa, and Merced counties. And as a division chief, I always had my phone on me for emergencies within Madera County. Whether it was a citizen that may have passed away in a vehicle accident, I get notification of that so I could contact the elected supervisor. I was always engaged if there was an issue going on within Madera County, 24
Okay.
hours a day.
Okay, you just said that you would respond to emergency issues after hours, is that right?
I would respond to emergencies after hours, depending on the level of emergency.
And were you also expected to respond to non-emergency activities of the fire department after hours?
What would be a non-emergency activity of the fire department?
Well, you defined what you respond as emergency. So whatever in your mind does not qualify as an emergency.
Yeah, so that may be a town hall meeting in Oakhurst. That could be a city council meeting in the city of Chowchilla or Madera. That would be a non-emergency event for me.
You testified that as assistant chief, you approved all fire department employees overtime. Is that correct?
I approved all the fire, are you asking about the mechanics overtime, or are you asking about emergency responders?
Okay, we're talking about the mechanics. Did you approve all of their overtime?
I viewed every time card that came through Madera County's payroll system, yes, for county employees for the fire department.
Okay, and so our time cards, when do employees fill out their time cards, to your knowledge?
Monthly.
Okay, and so they submit a time card with all of their hours after they have already worked those hours, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so you don't approve overtime in advance of overtime being worked, is that accurate?
If you're asking if they would have went out on their own record based on a phone call, I knew every time a fire engine broke down within Madera County. That was something I paid attention to. It was something I was notified of by the on-duty battalion chief.
That was not my question. Do you approve overtime before employees work a shift that would entitle them to overtime?
There was expectations given to the battalion chiefs when overtime is approved. And yes, I would be the final approval of that overtime.
Okay, so before someone can even leave their house to begin a shift that would entitle payment of overtime, you would have to approve that? Is that what you're testifying?
No, I would be notified that that fire engine was broke down and a mechanic was responding. Did they directly ask me if can I have them respond to fix a fire engine? They knew their expectations, what was needed to keep the fire department functional.
Okay, so did you just testify that I believe you're testifying regarding the battalion chiefs. You're saying that they would not need your prior approval in order to contact a mechanic regarding a fire engine being broken down? Is that accurate?
They were given direction on when, depending on the need, what was approved, yes.
Okay, so if a battalion chief did call a mechanic after hours regarding a to respond to an engine being broken down, that was pre-approved by you. Is that correct?
Can you restate the question, please?
So if a battalion chief did in fact contact a mechanic to respond after hours regarding a fire engine being broken down, then that was pre-approved by you per your instructions. Is that correct?
Yes, the battalion chief knew the expectations of what was needed and when was needed, and they would be able to make that call, yes.
Okay, you testified that you knew about the on-call after hours calendar. Do you recall that testimony?
Yes.
Okay. You testified that the employees on that calendar were not required to answer their phone after hours. Do you recall that testimony?
Correct. So it was basically a rotational phone list is what that calendar was.
Okay, and who was on that rotation for your
It would
understanding?
have been Ryan, Jeremy, and Roy.
Okay, and you said that if all three of those individuals did not answer their phone, then they were not required to answer their phone. Is that accurate?
That's correct. The dispatcher, if they were unable to get the fire engine back to the fire station, the dispatcher would then call a tow truck.
And where would the tow truck take the fire engine?
It would take it back to it would take it to the fleet shop, the shop over by the jail on 28th Street, Dozier.
Okay, as someone who doesn't know about fire department operations, doesn't that fire engine need to be out on the streets responding to an emergency?
No, I'm sorry. I must have missed that, not explained that well enough. And that's why we have extra fire engines, or what we call relief fire engines. We have relief fire engines available. Whether if the tow truck's going to tow that vehicle back to a facility, they may tow it directly to Fresno, not even back to the shop to get maintenance work. But we have extra fire engines available. We call those relief fire engines, and we would transport those employees via battalion chief to get a reserve fire engine. And then that puts that fire station back in service.
Okay, you testified regarding improvements in the fire engines that the fire department was utilizing. Do you recall that testimony?
Correct.
And when did those improved engines start going into operation?
I'd love to talk about this. How long do we have?
I need a short and concise answer to that question.
Okay, so I would say I worked with the county board of supervisors, and we started making those changes once I became the division chief. We really improved the work conditions within the fire maintenance shop. We provided the employees extra tools, new tools, upgraded service trucks to drive. We got them uniforms, jackets, things outside of within their MOU. We were able to provide those. And then we were also able to upgrade our water tenders to smaller water tenders with smaller tanks that we were able to quickly do quick filling. And our fire engines were really out of date, and we were able to update those fire engines to state-of-the-art resources. And we made really big things with cancer stuff for the firefighters. So I mean, basically that shop, they had the mechanics, they had no offices. Their break room was out in the shop. We were able to create them a break room, create offices individually for them. So with all those other additional changes, we really brought that shop up, even though it's an old building, bring that up to a state-of-the-art facility prior to me leaving Madera.
Okay, so that was kind of a long-winded way to say that it was a long process. Is that accurate?
It was a long process, and that's unfortunate with not only the shop employees, but the fire department employees, some of the newer employees. They didn't see where we were at prior to. So a lot of those changes, we made those changes kind of in short order from 2018 to 2023 and 4 when I left.
Sorry, can you repeat that? When did you leave the county fire department?
February 24 would have been my last full month there. 23, I'm sorry, February 23.
You testified regarding this conversation that you had with Roy, Jeremy, and maybe Ryan around October of 2022 regarding standby. Do you recall that testimony?
Yeah, I didn't say maybe Ryan, but I remember that. I can tell you where we were sitting, probably the seating positions of each person. We were in that break room that I talked about improving for the employees.
Okay. You mentioned in that conversation that the mechanics' use of their service vehicle. Do you recall that testimony?
Correct.
Okay. In your prior testimony, you made a distinction that you communicated during this conversation between being paid standby or taking the county vehicle home at night. Do you recall that testimony?
Yes, so standby would require them to be available and respond in when they were on call directly. They didn't have a choice at that point. So yes, I remember making that statement.
Okay, and so how does the fact that they had their service vehicle at home play a role in whether or not they were on standby?
It had no role whether they were on standby. They were never on standby when I was the chief there. They were never on standby prior to me being the chief there. It was past practice. They took those vehicles home as a benefit to the employee. There was a benefit to the county. That benefit was if they were available, they'd come back. Or if they were on their way to work or on their way home, they'd be able to answer the call if needed and available.
Okay, but you in that meeting gave them an option. Either you're paid standby or you take the vehicle home. Do you recall that?
Yes,
distinction?
so paid standby, there were strict requirements based on the MOU that I explained to the employees. I told them I needed to check with the county CAO budgetarily. I think I would have been fine, but something I need to work with them. I also directed them to their union to make sure that my interpretation of what standby was is what their interpretation was, because under my direction, they were never on standby, nor were they required to meet those expectations of standby.
Okay, yeah. I'm still confused. So, but you told them something along the lines of if you want to get paid standby, you can no longer take your service vehicle home. Is that accurate?
Correct. Basically, you can't have your cake and eat it too. It was for them to make the choice, which one did they want to drive the vehicle and have the option of coming back, or did they want to be mandated to come back to work on call?
Okay, and you said that you're familiar with the SEIU and county contract for the service unit. Is that correct?
Correct. Like I was talking earlier, since 1999, I was a member of the union. SEIU, it's the purple shirt folks. For the state of California, that's bargaining unit 1. I oversaw bargaining unit 1, bargaining unit 7 employees, and bargaining unit 8 employees on the state side. On the county side, SEIU employees, I did oversee the service unit. I had a great mentor, Tim Sturm, who I worked for a lot of years, and he ensured that all of us knew our MOUs to ensure we protected the employees' rights, and that's been my goal. So yes, I was familiar with the SEIU MOU.
Okay, and specifically with the standby provision of that MOU, were you familiar?
Correct. Yep, I had reviewed that multiple times. Prior to Ryan, Roy, Ryan, and Ashley all worked for Steve Gardini. And Steve Gardini was the one that set the past practice for the county fire department for those take-home vehicles. And he made me aware of that when I started as a battalion chief, that they were not on standby. It was voluntary callback. Steve Gardini reassured me when I became the assistant chief of Madera what standby meant and what their take-home vehicles meant, that they were not required to return. They would come back if they were available. And I also read that section in the MOU multiple times myself.
Okay, so since you read that section of the MOU multiple times, does it mention anything in the standby pay provision regarding the service vehicles?
Is it so? It's been a couple years since I read that. It's been a couple years since I've been in Madera. So there's something specific you'd like to speak to, I can turn to that, or if that's one of the exhibits, or if you want to read it to me quickly.
So I would like you to testify regarding your recollection. So based on how you were interpreting the standby pay provision at the time that you were assistant chief, was it your understanding that the standby pay provision in the contract mentioned the service vehicles?
I think you're confusing the MOU with approved vehicles that were allowed to be parked at a residence based on the Board of Supervisors approval.
No, I'm not confusing it. You're just not answering my question. Did the MOU provision, per how you were interpreting it and applying it when you were assistant chief, did that mention anything regarding service vehicles and standby pay?
Objection, the witness has already testified, so asked and answered as to that he did not associate the vehicles with standby.
That's not what my question was. He's testifying that he knew the MOU for all the reasons that he's saying he knew the MOU and was applying it per the letter of the MOU. And so I'm asking him if, per his understanding, there was some reference there to the service trucks.
Go ahead. A little more latitude. I'll try to ask it in a different.
Okay. Mr. Watson, you've already testified that you're familiar with the SEIU Memorandum of Understanding and the standby pay provision. Is that correct?
That's correct. During my time of employment in Madera County as Assistant Chief, yes, I had that understanding.
Okay. And based on that understanding, is it from your recollection, did that provision of the contract mention these service vehicles that the mechanics would take home?
The MOU talks about what the requirements were, and the vehicles, my recollection is based on the approval of the Board of Supervisors, which county vehicles were allowed to be taken home.
Okay. Does he have access to exhibits?
Yeah, it'll take me a second to look them up on my phone.
Mm.
Which exhibit are you referring to?
Do you have access to union exhibits?
Which page number?
So I would like you to look at Union Exhibit 6, page 1. And let me know when you're there.
Sorry, I'm trying to look at those, find that on my phone while being on this computer. Exhibit 4, Exhibit 2, Exhibit 1. That's the grievance.
Nope,
Okay.
it's a county ordinance. Union Exhibit 6, page 1.
County exhibits, consolidation.
I don't believe he has it. I apologize. His
Yeah, this
him
may,
having to testify remotely was very last minute. Counsel, would it be okay if he just looks up the county code?
You can do that as well if it's fine with the commissioners.
Fine with me.
You, I don't want to take over. Do you want to direct him to the county code
Yeah.
provision?
Do you have access to a web browser, Mr. Watson?
yes, I believe so. Madera County, and what's the exhibit number or the code number?
The code, this is the Madera County Code of Ordinances, section 2.60731.
Madera County ordinances. Sorry, I typed slow.
Okay.
2,
Section 2.60731. All right, and let me know when you're there if you need it to repeat it to you.
okay. Madera County ordinance, section 2, number,
It's section 2.60731.
Would you like to read it to me? It's not functioning very quickly. Council, are you okay reading that to me?
No, give me a second. Thank you. You testified regarding a Cal card. Do you recall that testimony?
Correct.
Okay. As assistant chief, did you have to approve the purchases that were made on those Cal cards?
Yes.
Okay, and as assistant chief, did you ever personally try to purchase parts or anything that was not fuel with one of those Cal cards?
As an assistant chief, I did not. I didn't make any purchases since I was the one approving purchases.
So before, I mean, did you ever at any time with your association with the county's fire department make purchases with a Cal card?
Yes, as a battalion chief.
Okay, and how long before you were assistant chief was that the case?
Are you asking how long I had a Cal card or how long was I a battalion chief?
How many years between you were a battalion chief and assistant chief?
I was a battalion chief from 2011 to 2018.
Okay, so you hadn't made a purchase on a county Cal card since at least 2018, is that right?
Correct, but very familiar with the process, very familiar with the approval process. It's as simple as you and I swiping our own credit card.
I have no further questions for this witness.
Correct.
No redirect. Thank
Okay,
you.
well, have any questions from the commissioners? Joe, go ahead.
Watson, during your time in the position that you're in, and not necessarily the individuals that we're discussing right now, grievances, how many times do you recall or have you ever disapproved of any CAL FIRE employees from taking their vehicles home?
I'm sorry, one more time?
Sorry about that. In the position that you're in at this moment with CAL FIRE, and I'm not talking about the individuals that we're discussing right now concerning the situation they're in, but I just want to ask you, at any time during your tenure, have you disapproved any CAL FIRE employee from taking their vehicle home?
No, I have never not approved an employee with an assigned vehicle taking it home. If they were assigned a vehicle, they were allowed to take it home.
So if an individual wants to take it home, then you go ahead and allow it. Of course, they follow the procedure.
Correct. As long as they were following the policy and procedure of the county or the state of California, they were allowed to take that vehicle home.
So all this time that you have been, either you have been working for Cal Fire, then you've never disapproved of anybody from taking it home.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes.
I'll defer for now.
Okay,
I'm still gathering thoughts. Thank you.
Mr. Atwood.
Good evening, Chief. Bill Atwood here. During the hiring process, I'm sure a question comes up of availability and willingness to work after hours and overtime. Correct?
Yes.
What would have been chances of an employee going through the interview process if they said in the interview process, would you be willing to work overtime and respond back as needed if the employee said, I don't ever want to be called after hours? Would that employee have been considered for employment?
No, we clearly, during the application process and the interview process, explain how the county fire department functions, what the job duties are of a master mechanic, what the kind of the expectations are, or how it functions in the fire department. And we would explain that. Had an employee says, I never want to work outside of 8 to 5, then yeah, that probably, they wouldn't have scored very high on that particular question. Because there was opportunities for those master mechanics to go out statewide on these large incidents within California, the different fires and floods. And, we explained that to them also in that interview process. And I cannot recall anybody during that interview process not being excited about having those opportunities.
Okay, and then what would have been the reaction of a battalion chief at 11 o'clock at night needing a mechanic, and the mechanic says, on a consistent basis, I don't want to come out at night. I'm not talking one time, but if this mechanic 4 or 5 times had said, I just don't have any interest. And I know you can't interpret what a battalion chief would say, except if you had been the battalion chief, what would your reaction have been?
And Matt Watson as the battalion chief, I just wouldn't call that particular mechanic ever again. And I would call the person that typically wants to come back. I wouldn't even bother with the person that doesn't want to come back. And if it was no one wanted to come back, I'd just simply get on the radio, Mariposa Battalion 4213, start a tow truck. And it's as simple as that.
Okay. And so you would not have ever contacted his or her supervisor and saying,
No,
"Hey, what's the problem?"
No, it was never required, so I can't get upset with somebody if they're not following, if it's not a requirement, I can't get upset with them.
Okay. And then the final question on the calendar. So your understanding is that the calendar was just who would get the first call that particular week, correct? Or who would get the call, not
Correct, yeah. Who would get the first phone call, and you just work your way through the phone list. If it's Ryan, then it's Ryan, Roy, Jeremy. They just, and the dispatchers just call in the order of their radio number.
Right. And so, and this may be out of your knowledge base, but when you were discussing with the employees their desire to have this rotational phone call calendar, as you put it, were they saying, I just don't want to be called every week? Or, I don't understand. I guess where I'm confused is if they didn't have to respond, if I didn't have to respond, I could just put the phone on off. I wouldn't be responding every other week. I could just turn the phone off.
Yeah, I think it was based on, like I talked earlier about the family situation is if I'm closer to Uncle Bob, I'm calling Uncle Bob before Uncle Roy. Is the type of thing. So they wanted to not be the first one to receive the phone call. Basically, they wanted to share the phone calls. So if more people liked employee A versus employee B, they called that person. People called who they had the relationship with, I guess what I'm trying to say. So that's why they wanted the calendar, the rotational phone call calendar. They wanted that over them calling based on over personalities.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Watson, I have a question. You said you reviewed the bills from the tow company. It indicated that they were called by ECC. Was there any indication of a mechanic having been on site on those tow bills?
No, but they're, and like I said earlier, is not everyone came from one of our ECC dispatchers. There at times would have the names of the mechanic on there or Ryan, just depending. I mean, but a lot of the times I looked at the bill more specifically and I knew the bill was coming in, but some of those bills were also during the normal work hours.
I see. Thank you.
Perez, are you ready?
Yeah, hi, Mr. Watson, Abel Press here. Did you ever have to enforce a no overtime mandate for any given month during your time as assistant chief?
No.
And if you had to enforce such a mandate, strike that, sorry. Mr. Watson, you had said that you were responsible for the department's budget, and you also testified that as employees needed overtime, it was typically or generally approved by their direct supervisor. As a manager, or as a department head, did you have a budgetary number in mind that you reviewed at the end of the month when approving the time cards and reviewing the amount of overtime spent?
In our budget, both on the emergency responders and the non-emergencies, we had a budget line in there for overtime. Just based on historical knowledge that previous years, how much overtime we would expend. And so yes, I guess, yes, I had that number. I looked at that number. It wasn't basically monthly, but it was based on the year. But it's a kind of a complicated question because if it was a fire within the state responsibility area up in the mountains, is a lot of times we'd be able to charge that county employees rate back to the state of California, which would alleviate some of those costs from the county. So I guess short answer, yes, I looked at it and yes, I managed it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Atwood has a question.
Hi, Chief. Bill Atwood again. We've heard about a past practice document none of us have seen that says that that was signed prior to the hiring of the grievance of the idea of they could take the truck home in lieu of getting the standby pay. Do you have a copy? I have not seen that. Do you know who signed that? And because I haven't seen that.
Yeah, to my knowledge, there's never been a document on the past practice. From my memory, the first time I would have seen a Madera County mechanic outside of their normal work hours in a county vehicle would have been on a fire in Raymond in 2006. And they came up and worked on a county fire engine, but I was not assigned to Madera then. But I know that employee in 2006 had a take-home vehicle.
Okay, so what I believe testimony was the grievance, the three people, Jeremy, Roy, and Ashley, had not seen that, but they had been told that it had been signed prior to their hiring, and that was just the general practice. But you've never seen that document either.
Yeah, to my knowledge, it was a general practice.
So it was,
From-
it
from
was,
historical
it
practice.
was, it was just understood that that's what it was.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Explains why I can't find it.
Okay, Mr. Watson, Tom Fry, Chairman here. Can you, and just bear with me, I know it's going to be repetitive. What is the purpose of the calendar?
The calendar, the employees requested a calendar to know who would be called back first. That calendar was used as basically a rotational phone list. And if the employee on the calendar was unavailable, we just move on to the next employee.
And was this calendar in place when they took the service vehicles home with them?
No, they were already taking from the time they were new employees, they were taking the vehicle home. This calendar would have been a request after they had worked for the county for multiple years.
And I don't know if it was an actual testimony, but the parts assistant was not expected to do overtime.
No, I think there was one planned event that the parts assistant wanted to work. And there was a project on the weekend and there was a need. She wanted to work. We accommodated that. It helped both the employee and the fire department, but never an expectation after hours for the parts assistant.
If you're working on a emergency vehicle at 3 o'clock in the morning and you've got a mechanic out there because he thinks he can fix it, but would there be parts in a warehouse somewhere that might solve that problem and repair that vehicle on site quicker than a tow truck?
No, on our service units, there's parts on the service unit. In the shop, we have additional stockpile of parts. The parts stores aren't open after normal business hours. So the parts assistant, and that's why I don't know, maybe I didn't say it well enough, but the parts assistant wasn't needed after outside hours because the parts stores are closed. If the mechanic didn't have it on their truck or wasn't in the shop, there's nothing the parts assistant would ever be able to do outside of normal work hours.
I might beg to differ with you, answer my question. If that 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning scenario happens and say the service truck doesn't have that one specific part with him and they're 15 miles away from the shop, but the shop has that part, who's going to go get the part or who is best served to go get the part and take it to the mechanic?
That at that hour, the mechanic or the on-duty battalion chief.
So then why is the parts assistant's phone number on the bottom of the calendar? What purpose is there?
Just identifying the phone number.
But everybody already knows that.
The employee wanted their phone number on the calendar.
So that number really would not be used by anybody after late hours, such as my scenario was then.
Correct. It would not be used.
Nobody's going to assist that mechanic to help speed things up by taking a part to them directly.
No.
Doesn't seem like that's a very efficient use of the system.
Well, they have the firefighters on that apparatus would be able to assist.
And they're going to leave an active site to go get a part rather than have somebody else who is closer to the part come and get. I send my wife for parts all the time. My son sends me for parts while he's working on stuff. It just seems to me to be a lot more efficient to have someone who is the closest to the part, get the part, take it to the location where they might be, especially if they're up in the mountains.
Yeah, for us, it's quicker to go get another fire engine.
Okay,
than it is to go, than it
I'm
is for us
sorry.
to go get the part.
I'm sorry, I have a hard time believing that because it's gonna take time to prep that truck and get it going and then drive it up the hill, say you're going to the mountains. I'm thinking long distance. If you're
No,
just down
if-
the highway in Fairmead, yeah, maybe so.
Yeah, no, if there's the North Fork fire engines broke down, we can go back to the North Fork Fire Station and get another fire engine.
Yeah. No, it's that, I'm not disagreeing with that. Sometimes, some scenarios I can see where it'd be more beneficial to take apart, and I don't understand the resistance to that.
Yeah, and I mean, and I guess, if the part's at Four Corners and you're in Chowchilla, it's quicker for us to go to Madera and grab another fire engine and go back to Chowchilla than it is to Four Corners.
Okay. You would know best. You've got the department, or you had the department. Thank you very much. Do we have any more questions from the commission? Okay, Joe?
Mr. Watson, on the calendar, is this just a set calendar that you have in your office, or does every employee that are supposedly want to be on standby, do they get a copy of that calendar?
Yeah, so we made that in calendar to support the employees at their request, and the battalion chiefs would have access to that calendar, yes.
So in other words, if one of the employees is interested, he'll request a copy of the calendar, right?
Correct. Yep. So the mechanics would have had a copy of that schedule because they're the ones that asked for that schedule, yes.
And they keep that with them all the time.
I'm assuming, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any redirect?
Just real quick, thank you. Chief Watson, during the questioning of the commissioners, there was some testimony regarding the purported in lieu of agreement. Just to clarify, to your knowledge, has there ever been a practice where the master mechanics are provided a county vehicle to take home in lieu of being paid standby?
Never in lieu of.
Thank you.
Ross?
Yes. Mr. Watson, what is your understanding of what in lieu of means?
In place of?
Okay, because you have previously testified that you communicated to the grievance, at least Roy and Jeremy, that they could either take their service truck home or get paid standby. Is that correct?
What I was trying to explain is if they wanted the standby, there was additional requirements to be part of the standby.
Okay, and that would require them to leave their service truck at the shop.
Yes,
Okay, so you did in fact tell them that they were taking the service truck home instead of getting paid standby pay.
yeah, so right now there was 3 employees taking vehicles home. And if there was a mandatory standby, there's only a need for 1 person to have a vehicle.
So you testify that you've seen the on-call calendar schedule, right?
Correct.
So you've testified that the employees, the mechanics, requested this calendar be made, is that correct?
Your question was, did the mechanics request the calendar be made?
That's right.
Correct, yes.
Okay, but who would draft and create the calendar?
Ryan asked Ashley to create the calendar.
Okay, and Ryan had played no part, from your understanding, in creating that calendar?
My understanding is Ryan asked them to split the calendar by employee, and Ryan was taking it, I believe it was every other weekend in the holidays.
My question is, did Ryan play any part in creating the schedule on the calendar?
Did Ryan type the names in the calendar? Not to my knowledge.
Wait, so you testified that you know that Ashley Diaz's phone number is on the calendar. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. And it is your understanding that even though her phone number is on the calendar, she was not meant to be contacted after hours. Is that correct?
yes, but that calendar is also who they called during the normal workday. And that's why the calendar, if they wanted the calendar to made them, it supported the employees, then that's why I wanted the calendar. They wanted to know who'd be called first. And that's why Ashley's name wasn't listed on the dates.
So even during the regular workday, if Roy's name was on that calendar for that date, during the regular workday, it would be Roy's responsibility to answer the phone first.
Yes, that's who the employees should be calling first based on the name on the calendar.
Okay, so this is not an after hours calendar from your understanding. This is a regular shift calendar.
It's a calendar stating who receives the first phone call.
Okay, so from your understanding, it was Ashley and not Ryan who created this calendar?
Ryan's the one that asked me about the calendar, and part of Ashley's administrative duties, I believe he asked her to make the calendar. So Ashley's the one that physically made the calendar.
Okay, so are you saying that it was Ashley's responsibility to create a call schedule for the other mechanics and herself, including her supervisor? Because he's also on this calendar.
I believe. Now, are you asking what? I'm sorry, I
Is
misunderstood
it your understanding that it was Ashley's responsibility and within her scope of duties to create a schedule for herself, the other mechanics, and her supervisor, who's also on this calendar?
She wouldn't have been on the rotation calendar, but Ryan would have given direction on the calendar. She would have been the administrative function.
Okay, so this calendar was made at Ryan's direction. Is that correct?
At the employee's request, yes.
Okay, so at Ryan's direction, Ashley would input information to create this calendar. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so really, Ryan was responsible for the schedule on this calendar. Is that accurate?
If you're asking who the responsible person is, that would be Matt Watson as the department head at the time.
Who determined that someone's name was there on this week and someone's name was there on that week? Who made that determination?
It was just a rotational thing, is they just split the time up equally.
It's not equal because Ryan's name is not here as many times as the other people's names are. Are you aware of
Objection.
that?
That,
Argumentative.
I'm trying to understand how this calendar is created.
He's not answering the question that she's asking.
Well, she can ask questions, but I would object to argumentative questions.
Yeah, I'm gonna overrule.
yeah, so maybe Ryan's name was not on that calendar, but Ryan would be the one that's primarily called. He's the shop supervisor. He's gonna have the most knowledge of the operation of the fleet, most operational knowledge of his employees, who's available.
Yeah, my question is Ryan the one making this schedule as it appears on the calendar?
Objection asked and answered.
He has not answered my question.
I agree. He has not answered.
Well, are you asking about who typed it? It'd be Ashley.
No, I'm not asking who
Who
typed
would have
it.
given, that you were asking who made it? That's to me who's made it. But who would give direction would have been Ryan to Ashley to type the calendar.
Okay, so the content in this calendar is inputted per Ryan's direction. Is that correct?
I would say yes.
Okay, so I don't believe that you have access, or actually, does he have access to the calendar?
I,
Mr. Watson, can you see any of those calendars?
yeah, I'm trying to look. Is it in the county exhibit?
It's in the county
Or is it in a
exhibit
different exhibit?
6. It should be the last exhibit, so if you scroll all the way to the end.
No, it's actually Exhibit 7.
Okay, January 2023.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes,
Close
and
enough?
yeah, the witness is looking at the county exhibit because I don't believe he has union exhibits, and so the county exhibit is Exhibit 6, which is the same thing as Union Exhibit 7. Okay, do you see under the notes column at the bottom of the calendar?
yes,
Okay, so there it says a shift starts at 8 a.m. on first day of covering week and ends 8 a.m. of the following Monday of coverage. Do you see that?
yes.
Okay, so from your understanding, does that include the nights in between each weekday?
That would also include the nights of each weekday for who was first on that phone call list.
Okay, and that would also include weekends, right?
Yes,
And from your understanding, this calendar is not differentiating between regular shifts, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, and shifts after hours and on weekends. Is that correct?
correct.
Okay. Can you look at that same notes column? It says Ashley Diaz is available for parts assistance.
A.Diaz is available for us. Yes, I see
Okay.
that.
Okay. And you testified that she's not, she would, even though it says this here, she was not intended to be contacted after hours. Is that correct?
She's not intended to be contacted. The notes do not say that, but there was not a need nor ever direction given for her to work after hours,
Okay.
other
but-
than the one planned event I talked about.
Okay, but this calendar does not say that.
The calendar does not say that.
No further questions for this witness.
Any other questions?
No further questions. Thank you.
I think we have one from.
No, I discovered that,
You're okay. Okay. Are we done with this witness?
County's all through. Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Watson, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Matt.
Can we take a short 5-minute?
Trying to update my exams to make them as short as possible. I want to be done tonight as I believe as much as you do.
Well, I don't want to shortcut anything. Try to keep that in mind. Make sure our questions are really necessary.
Respectfully, the union believes that the county's like most crucial witness is still has not been called. And so from our perspective, that person is probably going to spend more time on the witness stand than Mr. Watson did.
Of course, you can't think about it now, but we're gonna think of alternative dates. And if it gets to that. Do the best we can with what we got, and we'll see where we end up close to 9 o'clock. Okay. So go ahead and call your next witness.
Oh, yeah, I was just rejoicing at the fact that I'm going to come back down pretty soon, I think, for more days of here.
Oh, is that where you are? Is Oakland?
Yeah.
The town without a team of any kind.
I will not tolerate any Oakland slander at this
I'm
meeting.
not slandering. I've stayed in Oakland and it was just fine.
Okay, are we ready?
Yes, go
Okay.
ahead, sir.
All right. No, that's fine. The county would call Ryan Knoll to the stand.
Your microphone is on.
Is on. Green
right.
light's on.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you are about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
State your name and position.
Name's Ryan Knoll. I am currently fleet manager for Madera County Fire Department.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Knoll. How long have you held the position of fleet manager?
About 6 years and 4 months.
Okay. And do your duties in that position include working with the fire master mechanics?
Yes.
Are you familiar with their job duties?
Yes.
What position did you hold prior to your current position as fleet manager?
I was a master fire mechanic for 10 years.
Okay. Is that the same position that Mr. Minnick and Mr. Witten currently hold or did hold under your supervision?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. In your current position, do you supervise the department's parts assistant?
Yes.
Okay, and are you familiar with the duties of that position?
Yes.
Okay. Are you familiar with the concept of an employee being on standby?
Yes.
What does that mean to you?
Meaning of standby to me is pretty simple because I did it for 5 years. So you're required to come back to work and you're required to answer the phone after hours when you are on standby.
Okay. And you stated that you did it for 5 years. Was that with Madera County Fire Department?
No,
And where did you do standby work?
it was a different company.
Okay. Are you familiar with the grievance that is related to this hearing?
I'm familiar, yes.
Okay. Are you, maybe redundant, but are you familiar with the employees who filed the grievance?
Yes.
Grievance, I should say.
Yes.
Okay. That grievance was filed in May of 2023. So for the remainder of my questions, unless I direct you otherwise, I just want you to tell us about what happened before that time, okay?
Okay.
All right. As a supervisor for the department's mechanics, did you ever assign standby to them while they were under your supervision?
No.
And does that include Mr. Minnick and Mr. Witten?
Yes.
To your knowledge, have they ever been on standby?
Not when they're employed with Madera County Fire, no.
Okay. Have you ever assigned standby to the department's parts assistant?
No.
Does that include Ms. Diaz?
Correct.
To your knowledge, has she ever been on standby as a parts assistant for Madera County Fire Department?
No.
Speaking more generally now, to your knowledge, do you have the ability to authorize standby?
No.
To your knowledge, who does?
CAO has to come from the CAO.
Okay, and CAO is the county administrative officer?
Correct.
Okay. Have you ever, to your knowledge, had the authority to assign standby?
No.
That's never been delegated to you.
No.
Prior to the grievance, to your knowledge, did Mr. Minnick or Mr. Witten ever receive after-hours work-related calls?
Yes.
What types of calls were those?
Some calls are just basically information, and then some calls could be, hey, I'm broke down the side of the road. Can you come help me out?
Okay. And how do you know that they were receiving those calls?
Phone records would say that they're receiving calls, and they would let me know, hey, I got a call last night, or got this problem going on, or hey, I had to go out and
Okay.
take care of this problem.
Okay. To your knowledge, were Mr. Minnick and Mr. Witten required to take those after-hours calls?
No.
Did you ever tell them that they were required to take those calls?
No.
If they took a call, were they required to then respond to the field if there was a
If they
need?
took a call,
If they
no.
took a call?
If they just took a call, no. They could say, no, I just walked into Costco with my wife and I can't make it, call somebody else or of that nature.
Okay, thank you. To your knowledge, were there any repercussions for them not taking after-hours calls?
No,
Any discipline at all?
no, there's no policy for that.
Do you have the ability to implement discipline?
Only through my direct supervisor, department head. They're the ones that pretty much, if I take a problem to them and they decide together what to do.
So do you have final decision-making authority when it comes to discipline?
No,
Okay. Did you ever yell at Mr. Minnick for not taking an after-hours call?
no,
And what about Mr. Witten?
no.
Did you ever tell Mr. Witten or Mr. Minnick that they were required to respond to after-hours calls within 1 hour they received a call?
No, I've kind of watched that through this, kind of been watching the videos and I'm just not understanding where that came from.
Okay. Under your supervision, was Ms. Diaz required to take after-hours calls?
No, not required, no.
Did she take after-hours calls?
She could, if it would be up to her accord if she wanted to, but she was not required.
Would there be a purpose for her to take an after-hours call?
She was given the opportunity that if one of the guys needed something after hours and she was available and could do it, then she was given the opportunity to do that. But it was not on a standby basis or you have to return to work.
There's been testimony that you told Ms. Diaz that she had to have her phone on her at all times and to respond immediately if she was called.
That is not correct.
Okay. But to your knowledge, she did have a county-issued phone.
Correct.
And what was the purpose of her county-issued phone?
County issued phone for her was if she's out getting parts in Fresno or Madera or anywhere, that she's out doing a parts run and we find out we need something else, she would be able to be contacted on a county phone, not a personal phone.
Okay. And would that parts run be after hours?
Not generally, no.
Okay. To your knowledge, has Ms. Diaz ever been disciplined for not taking an after-hours call?
No.
Okay. I'd like to refer your attention to it's actually two exhibits of the same thing. We'll just go with the union's exhibits, Union Exhibit 7. So you should have binders in front of you. And Union Exhibit 7, please. And let me know when you're there.
Looks to be a calendar.
Yes, it is a calendar. So you sort of already answered my question, but just for the record, do you know what this document is?
Yeah, it's a calendar for if somebody got a phone call, who would get the first call.
Okay, so is it your understanding that the purpose of this calendar is a call calendar of some kind?
Yeah, it's just a call calendar is all it is.
Okay,
It's a rotational call calendar.
okay. Did the fact that a name was on this calendar make it mandatory for that person to take an after-hours call?
No,
Did it make it mandatory for them to respond to an after-hours call?
no.
Did you create this document?
I did not create the document, but I did give direction to Ashley Diaz.
And what was the reason that you gave her direction to create the document?
You mean, what is the reason we made the calendar?
Yes.
It was requested by the two mechanics,
And by the two mechanics, do you mean?
Roy Minnick and Jeremy Witten.
Okay. I see Ms. Diaz's name. Well, actually, I don't even see her name. I see A Diaz. Do you know if that, and that's in the notes, do you know if that stands for Ashley Diaz?
Yeah, it
Okay.
stands for Ashley Diaz.
Do you know why her name is on the calendar?
She asked if it was, we discussed, if she could earn some overtime, you know, if the guys were out in the field on a Saturday and they needed a part, and she was available, um, if she could take the part to them.
So she asked for that opportunity for
Yes.
overtime?
Yes,
Did you require her to work that overtime?
no,
Okay. Did you require her to put her name on this calendar?
no.
She asked to put her name on this calendar?
Yeah, we discussed it.
Okay. There's been testimony that on a specific occasion, you were on this calendar,
Mhm.
and you received a call, and instead of responding to that call, you contacted Mr. Witten to cover for you.
Correct.
Do you recall an occasion like that?
Correct, yes.
Okay, can you explain what happened on that occasion?
Um, I was off on medical for my back. Um, I had Thursday, Friday off. It was a 3-day weekend. Got a call that, I don't know, it was probably 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. Can't remember exactly what time it was. Was laying in bed, resting my back, and I said, well, I know my name's on the calendar. Let's see if I can get a hold of one of the guys and maybe they can cover for me. You know, if not, then I'll just have the truck towed. So I called Mr. Whitten and he answered, and he couldn't make it. So I put coveralls on and went and put a fill filter on it and put her back on the road.
Okay, thank you. There's testimony that as a result of you having to go out and Mr. Witten not going out in your place, that you chewed him out, I believe was the testimony.
No,
Did that occur?
that is not correct.
Okay. Did you raise your voice at him at any
No.
point related to that?
No, there's no reason to. There's no discipline if you don't go out.
Okay. You testified that you could have the vehicle towed or the truck towed, I think is
Yes.
what you said. Can you explain what you mean by that?
That's sometimes that's an option. If there's nobody to go out and somebody's not available, then usually the BC would call a tow truck or I would call a tow truck and have him either take the truck to the station so the guys can swap all their stuff over as they're getting a reserve, or take it back to the shop where we could work on it at a later date.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Are you familiar with the department's practice of permitting mechanics, the fire master mechanics specifically, to take a county vehicle home?
Yes.
What was that practice?
We would take the vehicles home. Um, they weren't only used for after hours calls. They were used for saving time. If I had a, if I knew I had a job for a maintenance job to do first thing in the morning, you know, the guys would load the stuff up in the truck, or I would load my truck up with the stuff that I needed, and I would go straight from my home to cut the time down. Because some of these travel times can be, we have a station that from our shop is 97 miles round trip. So that takes a lot of the day. So that really cut back on a lot of that travel time for the guy coming into work, getting his stuff ready, and then driving out. And then that also works with, um, you might be doing compliances one day and you've got, which is a 90-day bid inspection is what it is. That's where we go out and inspect all the trucks to make sure they're safe to drive every 90 days. So you may have 10 trucks in the mountains that you've got to get done, and your last station is that 97-mile round trip, and it's 4:45, you just go home. You drive from that facility to home. And you don't have to go all the way back to the shop and unload your stuff, get in your car and go home. So there's
Okay.
many uses of those trucks besides just callback.
Okay, thank you. You testified that you were previously a fire master mechanic prior to your current position as fleet manager.
Correct.
When did you start as a master mechanic?
Oh, December of 08.
08?
Yeah, I believe
Okay.
that's recollection. Yeah. I'm working on my 17th year for the fire department.
Okay, well, congratulations.
Thank you.
When you started as a master mechanic, was there an understanding that the county vehicle was being provided to the mechanics in lieu of them being paid standby.
Not in lieu, no.
I would object to the vagueness of in lieu. It's clear that it's clear that these witnesses don't know what that means. So I would request that we use alternative language than in lieu of.
Right, counsel?
Sure. I mean, other than the assumption that the witnesses are not intelligent enough to
I know
understand.
I understand what in lieu means. It
Sure.
means, yeah.
Please don't respond until you're.
Oh,
Sure.
sorry, sir.
So I'll rephrase it.
And I will just say also,
He was talking, let him finish.
I'll rephrase it. So can I ask the witness what you?
Yes, and if she has an objection, then object to that.
Okay.
But yeah,
thank
you're
you.
gonna rephrase your question, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So when you started as a fire master mechanic, was there an understanding that the county vehicle was being provided instead of paying the mechanics standby for their after hours time?
No.
Okay. How was it when you were provided a vehicle, how was it explained to you?
It was explained to me, you take the vehicle home, and we had a work phone, of course. And if you were to accept a call and wanted to go back to work and earn the overtime and take care of the county equipment, then that's what you did.
Okay. Did you at any point when you were a master mechanic feel like you should be paid standby for your after hours time?
No.
Okay.
I always had the option not to go.
And when you were a master mechanic, did you receive after hours work related calls?
Yes.
Okay. And were you required to take those calls?
Not required, no.
Were you ever told that you were required to?
No.
During your time supervising Mr. Witten and Mr. Menick, on average, how many after hours calls did the three of you combined receive where you actually had to go out to the field in response per year?
Per year,
Yeah, on average per year.
probably our busiest year would probably be about 6. Not looking at records, I think our busiest year is probably like 6 between all three of us.
So during your busiest year, you received after hours calls that required you, or I guess it would strike that. During your busiest year, you received after hours calls that included a request for you to go out to the field,
Yes.
and that was 6 per year?
Yeah.
Okay, or 6 that year, I should say.
Especially since we've got newer equipment, that's really helped a lot.
Okay, thank you. When you were a fire master mechanic, were you ever forced to miss a family event because you had to respond to these after hours calls?
Absolutely.
objection. It's not relevant whether this person had to miss a family event. They're not a grievant, nor is your after hours work subject to this grievance at all. So I don't understand why this is relevant.
I'll sustain.
I think I'm done with that. Thank you.
Cross exam.
So you've been testifying about the mechanic service trucks. Do you recall that testimony?
Yeah.
Okay. Once Jeremy and Roy started working for the fire department, did you also have a service truck that you would take home with you after hours?
Yes, I believe when Jeremy started, it was probably about maybe 2 months, maybe 3 months until he got a truck because I was still in the truck. But I did have a pickup truck that I could respond if I had to. And once I gave Jeremy the truck.
Okay, so you're saying that after Jeremy started working for the fire department, you gave him your service truck?
Correct.
Okay. And then after that fact, you no longer had your own service truck?
Within maybe 4 months to 5 months after that, I had another service truck built. So yes, we all three had service trucks.
Okay. And did you have the option whether you wanted to take the service truck home or leave it in the shop overnight?
Yeah, really, yeah. If I didn't want to drive the service truck home, there was nothing saying that I had to.
From your understanding, if you didn't, were there any instances where you did not drive the service truck home after Jeremy and Roy had both already began with the fire department?
No.
You always took it home?
Hmm.
You testified that it was your understanding that it was optional for the mechanics and yourself to respond to after hours calls. Is that correct?
Correct,
Okay, but you did have a county issued cell phone. Is that right?
correct.
Okay, and you took that home with you after hours?
As a manager, yes, I did.
Okay.
And as a mechanic, I did.
Okay, the mechanics also had,
Hmm.
did they also have a pager?
At one time we did, but they never paged us out. It was an ECC thing, so they never, I carried a pager for 10 years and it never went off.
Okay, your pager never went off.
Yeah.
Okay, but do you know whether the mechanic's pager ever went off?
Not that I know of.
Okay. Can you be certain that it never went off?
Can I be certain it never went off? No, I can't be certain.
Okay.
I wasn't wearing the pager, so I
Was the
couldn't tell.
pager used for regular hour or after hours?
After
contact?
hours usually, yeah.
Okay, so the pager was for after hours contact?
Mhm.
And who would, to your knowledge, who would contact the mechanics through that pager?
That would be the ECC. One of the battalion chiefs would make a call, or a fireman would make a call to the ECC and said that they had an emergency services needed. So they would just, and each pager they were all paged the same. So if they sent a page out, all three would go off.
Did you have the option to turn that off?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you ever turn yours off?
Yeah.
Okay. You said the ECC, what does that stand for again?
It's the emergency center up in Mariposa.
Okay, so they
And
would,
emergency communication center.
okay. An emergency communication center would obviously contact you all regarding emergency.
Correct.
Okay. But it was your understanding that it was not required to respond to those emergency calls?
No, was not required.
If you all, the mechanics or yourself, did not respond to those emergency calls, how would that emergency be handled?
The battalion chief on scene would be contacted, or who was on duty would be contacted, and they would make provisions whether they're going to tow the truck or what they're going to do.
Okay, and once a fire truck is towed, what happens with that fire truck after that?
Depends on where it goes. If it goes to the station, then basically what we would do is we'd send a mechanic up the next day and figure out what's wrong with the truck and see if we can't fix it there. And if not, then we would have it towed back to the shop. But 9 times out of 10, when we knew, when you get the phone call, whether that truck needs to be towed to the shop or it can go back to the station.
Okay.
And that's it.
Okay, so if a fire truck was towed, it was no longer able to be used for that.
Not until one of us three looked at that fire truck and deemed it good to drive.
Okay. Are you aware of any costs associated with towing a fire truck?
Correct. Yes, I am.
Okay, and how are you aware of those costs?
I see the bills.
Okay. Can you give us, based on that knowledge, a rough estimate of how much it costs to tow a fire truck back to a station?
Well, and did you ask? Because I just had one towed. I had one towed from Station 12 to Fresno. No, excuse me, I take that back. I had it towed from Station 12 to the shop, and it was like $485.
$485 to tow
Mhm.
the truck.
Yes, it's not cheap.
Okay, does someone need to approve those costs before the truck is towed?
No, it's part of the emergency services. From my understanding, you don't even have to pull a PO to pay for a tow bill.
Okay, so there's no prior approval that goes into towing a fire truck.
No.
Okay.
We try to do it as least as we can, but it happens.
Okay, so if it costs nearly $500 to tow a truck, would it not be preferable for a mechanic to respond on site and see if they can make that fire engine operational?
Yeah,
Objection
most of those are, Sure.
assumes facts not in evidence. The witness hasn't testified that he's monitoring the budget or anything. He's the fleet manager.
You just said that he sees those.
He has stated he has knowledge of cost of towing and other costs associated with his job.
But but the question was, would it not be more economical or make more sense? And that's a budgetary decision. The witness has not testified that he's involved in the budget of the department.
I don't agree with it being a budgetary item if he has knowledge of what something costs to repair, which weighing the decision would be what he does every day to try to make a tow or not tow it with his knowledge of being the mechanic. Is that fair enough?
But it's your call. I can't.
I'm trying to be helpful here. I'm gonna overrule them.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so
so repeat the question, please.
the question was, it costs, according to your testimony, nearly $500 every time a fire engine is towed.
Hmm.
Is it, then is it more costly to do that instead of sending a mechanic to potentially try to get that fire engine back up
depends
and
on-
running?
It depends on what the breakdown is.
Okay, so let's say it's a minor breakdown that
Mhm.
can be addressed by a mechanic
Mhm.
easily.
It just depends where the truck's at, efficiency wise, how long it's gonna get there, take to get there. But most small stuff is sometimes cheaper than a tow bill, and sometimes it's not.
Okay, so if it's what I would just describe as a minor mechanical issue that could be easily addressed by a
Mhm.
mechanic, is it your understanding that the mechanics can still decline to respond to that issue on the field
Correct.
and instead request that a tow truck?
Correct.
You've mentioned a reserve.
Mhm.
So are reserves utilized whenever a fire engine is towed back somewhere?
Yes, correct.
Can you explain to us um kind of the logistics of utilizing a reserve in place of a fire engine that's been towed back to the shop?
Logistically wise, usually if you have an engine that goes down, you have a reserve engine. We have several in the mountains. Well, I wouldn't say several. We have a few in the mountains and a couple in the valley. It depends on where the breakdown is. And we pull that closest reserve in, and the firefighters staff that engine and go back to work.
When you say staff the engine, what does that mean?
That means that they are staffing that piece of equipment with CAL FIRE bodies.
Start
So
with,
firemen, you usually have a firefighter or a captain,
okay,
or you might have two, or an engineer and a captain.
do those reserve trucks have all of the necessary equipment needed for it to be readily utilized?
Yes, for the type of engine it is, you don't there's different types of engines, so I wouldn't take a type 3 and put it in place of a type 1. So yes, they have the same, basically the same equipment. One might be newer than the other, same equipment. It's typed that way by NFPA.
Have you ever yourself personally called a tow truck to tow a engine back to wherever it needs to be towed?
Yes,
And then did you participate in the process of replacing that fire engine with a reserve?
not usually, no. That's battalion chief and firefighters that do that.
Okay, so do you have any understanding of the time it takes between towing the fire engine and replacing that fire engine with a reserve?
Yes.
How long that takes? Okay, approximately how long?
Just depends on where, again, it depends on the location and what type of equipment that you're switching over. Usually it's just gear. So firefighter gear. Everything else stays on the truck, and because the reserve has what they need, they're just staffing another vehicle. That's all they're doing.
Okay, can you give me like a range of time that it can take?
Again, it depends on where the truck is broke down.
Okay, what's the longest that it could possibly take
The
from your
longest it
understanding?
could possibly take is I've seen them maybe 45 minutes to an hour. Just depends on how far they have to go to get another truck, or if the truck is right there. If the truck's right there, within 15 minutes, they're ready to go again.
Do you recall contacting Matt Watson regarding Roy and Jeremy concerns with standby pay at any time during their employment?
Yes.
Okay, do you remember when that conversation happened?
I couldn't tell you the exact date. No.
Okay, could you say whether it was towards the beginning of, the middle of, or the end of Jeremy's employment, for example?
Probably 3/4 of the way through, I would think. If I had to guess the time.
Okay, and were you a part of that conversation?
I was part of the conversation when I called Matt about their concern.
Okay, but when Mr. Watson talked to the two mechanics, were you a part of that conversation?
And I don't remember that conversation now.
At that time, what do you recall being the mechanics' concerns regarding standby pay?
They just was requesting standby pay, what they could do to get standby pay. So I contacted my immediate supervisor.
Okay, at that time, was it your understanding that the two mechanics believed that they were required to respond after hours?
No,
They did not believe that.
well, I don't know what they believe.
What did they communicate to you?
They've never communicated to me that they thought they had to answer the phone, if that's what you're asking.
Okay. Did you ever contact either of the two mechanics, Jeremy or Roy, after their regular work hours on a weekday or on a weekend?
Just I believe maybe twice over the years.
Twice, as in 2 times per each of them?
No, once each.
And you were referencing that the records would show how often you all were called. What records are you referring to?
We do work orders on everything, and we have service tasks. And when you put in for a work order, if you do an after hours call, our service task for that after hours call is after hours call emergency services. So we have a system that collects that information. When you put it in, it collects that information. And so if you work on a water pump, it has a service task for a water pump if you're doing that in the shop. So that emergency, anytime they do an after hours call, it goes under that category.
And that's if they respond to the call.
If they respond to a call and create a work order, yes.
Okay, but they could answer a phone call and not create, is there any circumstance in which they would respond to a call and not create that
No,
order?
there's nothing to, no. If you just take a call and a guy says, hey, I got a light bulb that's out, what do you want me to do? We'll work on it tomorrow or whatever. That's just a phone call. It's information.
Okay. Do you know about how long Jeremy worked for the department?
Probably 6 years at least.
Okay, so it's your testimony that in Jeremy's 6 years of employment, you only called him one time after hours?
For an emergency call, yes.
Okay. And during that one call that you made to Jeremy in the 6 years that he worked for the department,
Mhm.
did you tell him that he was not required to respond to whatever thing you were calling him about?
Didn't come up in the conversation.
Okay, can you, to the best of your recollection, what was that one call in the 6 years about?
When I was off with my back on that weekend, I called to see if he would cover.
Okay.
And he couldn't go, so so I went. Not a problem.
Okay, and during that call, do you remember about what year that was?
I'm gonna say it had to be like 22, 20, end of 21 for somewhere around 22, somewhere in there.
Okay, so was that before or after this call calendar
After
was already?
after this was made.
Okay. And was your name on the calendar for that day?
Yes, I stated that earlier.
Okay. You also stated that you were, I believe, on medical leave at that time. Is that
Well,
correct?
I took time off work 2 days and not going back to work until Monday. It was a 3-day weekend.
Okay. Um, was it a 3-day weekend for everyone or just for
Yes.
yourself?
Yeah, it was a holiday that Monday.
Okay. Um, okay. To your knowledge, are the mechanics or Ashley Diaz as a parts assistant, were they required to work on holidays?
Required? No.
Okay, but you were able to call them on holidays?
I'm not sure if I've ever called them on a holiday.
You just said that you called them on a holiday weekend.
Holiday
Objection
weekend,
misstates the prior
Saturday night.
testimony.
Say that again, sir.
Misstates the prior testimony. The witness did not state that he called Mr. Witten or Mr. Minnick. Apologize, maybe got them mixed up, but didn't state that he called them on a holiday.
Saying this is-
So it was a holiday weekend, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and you're saying it was the Saturday of that holiday weekend.
Correct.
Okay. And at that same time, you had some personal medical issue, is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Um, and you received a call during this Saturday of the holiday weekend, is that
Correct.
right? Would that have been outside of your regular work hours?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall what the call to you was about?
Yes.
Okay, can you briefly explain what it was about?
Yes. We had one of our newer engines on a pretty busy country road sitting in the middle of the road that quit running.
Sorry, I didn't hear that last part of what you just said.
We had an emergency vehicle, one of our newer engines, sitting in the middle of a country road at night, and the engine just stopped running.
Okay. And you chose to respond to that call?
Correct.
Okay. If it was a holiday weekend, you had a medical concern at that time, and you were not required to respond per your understanding, why did you take the option to respond?
That's who I am.
Can you elaborate on what do you mean by that?
And another decision was too, is I knew a tow truck would be 2.5 hours, 3 hours out sometimes. And, I had a fire truck sitting in the middle of the road. So I made the choice, my choice, to go out and take care of the issue.
Okay, so you thought you could more quickly and efficiently address the issue rather than calling a tow truck?
Yeah, the truck was less than 2 miles from my home.
Um, why did you, in that instance, why did you even answer the call? If it was a holiday weekend, you had a medical concern, and you know that you're not required to answer your phone.
Objection asked and answered. The witness already testified that's who he is.
Sustain.
Can I just clarify? I asked him why did he respond, and that's what he's already answered.
He did answer because that's just who he is. That's why
Right,
I understand it.
that's after he knew what the call was about. I asked him, why did he even answer the phone if he's not required to answer the phone? That's my question,
And
which
then
is
you
different.
said it differently than what you said the first time. So that was going to be what my response was. Rephrase the question.
Why did you answer the phone if you're not required to answer the phone?
Because I decided to answer the phone.
Or you said you just had to answer the phone?
No, I said I decided to answer the phone.
Okay, and so you also testified, so do you know how long Roy Minnick at this point has been with the fire department?
Roughly 7 years.
And it's your testimony that in those 7 years, you've called him one time after hours?
7 years. It may have been more than that because me and Roy worked together as mechanics first before I became manager.
How long did you two work together as mechanics before you became manager?
It I don't believe it was more than a year. It was probably 6 months, 5 months.
Okay, so in your time as a manager working with Roy,
Mhm.
approximately how many times did you recall calling him after hours?
Maybe a couple the whole time he's been there. 3 times maybe at the most. A lot of times they would call me.
Do you ever recall, so how long, to your knowledge, did Ashley Diaz work for the department while you were there?
Ashley's probably been there. She probably worked for our department for roughly 7 years, but she was also working downtown here at this building for a short amount of time.
Okay, but she also worked at the shop, is that correct?
Correct.
And in her 7 years employed by the county, how many times did you call her after hours?
For work,
Yes.
probably maybe once or twice to talk about a work subject.
Do you recall the what the purpose of those calls were?
No.
When you say a work subject, like what does that mean?
I mean, we might have been talking about um, a truck being towed in or something of that nature. But it wasn't to call her to go to work, if that's what you're asking now.
What would be the purpose of calling her after hours regarding a truck being towed in if she was not required to respond to that at that time?
I'm not sure.
Okay, so you're not sure why you were calling her after hours?
Yeah, it's been too long for that. Not sure.
So you've testified that you never told the mechanics, Roy or Jeremy or Ashley, that they were required to respond to calls after hours. Do you recall that testimony?
I recall that, yes, correct.
Okay, did you ever explicitly tell them that they're not required to respond, that it was optional?
It was never asked.
So no.
No.
Okay, I'm going to ask you now about Union Exhibit 7, which is the calendar.
Yep.
And you testified that this calendar was created at the request of some or all of the grievance. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. What was your understanding of why they were requesting this calendar be created?
They just wanted to know if a phone call went out, who would be called first.
And was that for regular hours or after hours or both?
It would, I imagine it would be for after hours.
Okay. So this was not a first call calendar for regular work hours. Is that correct?
No.
So, for example, if someone's name is on a particular date, are you on January 2023?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So I'm looking at the week of January 9th, 2023, and Jeremy's name is there. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So can you explain your understanding of if Jeremy's name is on here, what does that mean?
It's just, that's the first person they would call on the list. The BCs or somebody.
Okay, but they can, okay, but are other people, so Roy or yourself, are you still receiving calls even if Jeremy's name is on the calendar?
Yes, that can happen, yes.
Okay, so the calendar is not meant to show everyone who could possibly receive a call. Is that what you're testifying to?
You're gonna have to rephrase that question. I'm not sure what you're asking.
Okay, so even if your name is not on a particular date, you could still receive a call on that date. Is that your testimony?
Possibly, yes.
After hours? Okay.
Mm.
Can you look, for example, flip to July of 2023? So that's page, let's see, that's page 7.
Yeah, I'm there.
Okay, so do you see July 4th, 2023?
Mm. Yes,
Okay, so whose names are in that box?
mine and Jeremy's. Witten.
Okay. Why are there 2 names in that box?
That's one of the busiest times of year for
Oh.
us is 4th of July.
Okay, but if this is a first call list,
Mhm.
who's supposed to be called first, you or Jeremy?
Well, my name's first, so I would be the first one to be called on any holiday.
Okay. And is that specified anywhere on this calendar?
No.
Okay. So based on your testimony, even though Roy's name is not on the calendar for this day, he could still be called?
Somebody could call him, yes.
But from your testimony, none of you, Jeremy, or Roy, had to respond on July 4th,
No.
2023. Who determined the schedule on this calendar? on these
Determine the
calendars?
schedule.
Yeah, who's on for which week and who's not?
It was just pretty much random. I mean, as long as somebody's started one person and it just ended up the way it did.
Okay,
There
so
was no really thought into it besides, you know, some of them, we started out with Jeremy, we started out with Roy. It was kind of random. It wasn't like, there was a reason why we started with a name.
okay, so no one had any decision-making input onto whose name was on which date for this calendar.
It was discussed between me and Ashley.
Okay, who was making the decision? Was it yourself or was it Ashley?
That would be me.
Okay, can you explain to us why, so I'm seeing your name appear a lot less frequently than Jeremy and Roy's
Yes.
or Ashley's. Can you explain why that's the case?
When this was presented to me and they wanted this calendar, um, they said they wanted a calendar to see who was going to be called first. And they wanted me to be on the calendar also. And I told both of them, I said, I've been here long enough to know that I don't need to be on a calendar. If I get a phone call and I decide to take it, I'm going to take it. If not, I'm not. So to help to alleviate them, I told them I would take every other weekend and all the holidays. So if we did get a call, I'd be the first out if I decided to go.
Do you see on the notes box,
Yes.
do you see that? It says A Diaz available for parts assistance,
Mhm.
and it includes her phone number.
Mhm.
Was it your testimony that Ashley was not required to be available after hours?
Was not required to be available after.
Okay. Was she supposed to be getting contacted after hours ever?
She could if she wanted to. It was totally up to her cord. It was not mandatory for her to answer the phone.
Okay, but by including her on this notes and saying she's available for parts assistance, that's indicating to someone looking at this calendar that they can contact her after hours. Is that correct?
No,
And
that's
why?
not only for after hours. This, we change, CAL FIRE changes employees a lot at the stations, and not so much on the battalion chief level, but captains change a lot. And also so does your firefighters and your engineers. So by having her name on here, if this goes to the BCs and they need DEF for Station 12, they have her number. Because her number's not out as much as ours are.
Okay, you previously testified that this calendar was for after hours. Are you now changing your testimony that
No.
it's not for after
No.
hours?
The calendar itself is after hours,
Okay,
but the notes are not.
okay, so you publish
If this,
I have
if-
I have a question.
okay, go ahead. Sorry.
So you publish Ashley Diaz's contact on an after hours calendar, but did not intend for her to be contacted after hours?
No.
Did you ever, who was the assistant chief at the fire department at the time that this calendar was created?
Matt Watson.
Um, did you consult with Matt Watson regarding the creation of this calendar before it was created?
Yes,
Okay. Did he have any sort of final approval of it once it was created?
it was sent to him, yes. And if he didn't approve of it, he would have let me know right away.
Okay, but he didn't actually need to affirmatively approve it for you to send this to battalion chiefs or whoever needed
Correct.
to. So you were Roy, Jeremy, and Ashley's immediate supervisor during their employment at the fire department, correct?
Correct.
And what did it mean for you to supervise them? What kind of responsibilities did that put on you with regard to what they did?
The supervisory position, you give them tasks to do and make sure everything's getting done.
So you do assign them work to do.
Correct.
Is it true that you would approve their requests for time off and vacation?
I would approve their time cards, yes. At the first step.
So you would approve when they were working or not working per their time cards. Is that
Per
correct?
their time card, yes.
I believe I'm done, but I just want to take 30 more seconds to confirm. And I've confirmed that I am done. Thank you.
And any redirect?
No redirect.
Take questions from the council, commission?
One quick, just out of, Mr. Noel, you're the equipment fleet manager?
Correct.
Just out of curiosity, earlier in your testimony, you were discussing a tow truck.
Yes, sir.
Does CAL FIRE have their own tow trucks?
No, they do not.
No, you don't?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Chris?
Commissioner Noel, Abel Press here. Just to confirm, who asked for the calendar to be created or who requested it?
Jeremy Witten and Roy Minnick.
Okay. And when the request was made for the calendar and you agreed to it and you guys began, creating it, what problems did you believe you were solving by implementing this calendar?
I'm not sure what the question would be there. I don't. Just so they would feel, maybe that they would feel better to know who was going to get called first.
Okay. Did they specifically communicate any reasoning for their desire to have this calendar?
The conversation, if you want to know the conversation was, we don't want to lose our trucks. We want our trucks. We don't want standby, but we would like to have a calendar to know who was going to be called first.
And if there was no expectation to respond to the calls, then why do you feel they would need to be relieved from the calendar in the first place?
Just so they're not bothered with a call if we do have a call.
All right, no more questions. Thank you.
Mr. Atwood.
Hey, Bill, hi, I'm Bill Atwood. Few questions. As I understood Chief Watson, he said the calendar was created for all day.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean,
But
it's
I thought I heard you testify it was for after hours.
correct.
So we have top and bottom guy see it differently. And Chief Watson explained, and I understand that in a business, oh, well, if I'm a battalion chief and I like Jeremy better than Roy, I might call Jeremy
Correct.
first.
Yeah.
But which was it? Was it the all-day calendar or the 24/7 calendar? Or was it the after-hours calendar? Because the one thing I notice is it is not marked on the top. Dates are there, but it doesn't say after-hours calendar or
Correct.
24/7 calendar.
Correct.
So which is it? Or which was it?
I would say that what they were asking for is who to call after hours.
Okay,
That would be my answer.
okay, so that puts me to Ms. Diaz number.
Mhm.
If there was no expectation of her ever getting a call after hours, if I were Ms. Diaz and I'm typing this, I would have looked at you and said, why is my number here? That wouldn't have been on February, much less January. I wouldn't have typed it in.
So this,
So the expectation, if you're standing, obviously not right over her shoulder, you're saying, this is where I start.
yeah,
You're going to approve it and you're going to say, why is your number here? Or she's going to say, why is my number here? One of you is going to bring this up.
right, well, we talked about her number being on here. We did.
See, if it
And-
was an after hours calendar, it would make no sense, in my way of thinking, to have her number there.
Correct.
If it was an all day number, I would assume that most fire stations, shops, offices, we all have calling lists of office numbers to call. So if I was the chief in Station 12 up in Oakhurst,
Mhm.
aren't you impressed? I know it's 12.
Mhm.
That's the only station I know, but I know it.
You know it.
And if I'm there and I need deaf, whatever that is, I don't know, but
Mhm.
you all know what it is. If I need
Mhm.
deaf, I'm going to call her in the middle of the day and say, hey, I need some deaf, send it up.
Mhm.
I'm not going to call her at 8 o'clock at night and say I need deaf.
Correct. You're
Okay.
not.
You mentioned somebody might need a light bulb. Please tell me that a battalion chief at 10 o'clock at night is not calling anybody and saying, I need a light bulb in this engine.
No,
Can you
that's,
fix it tomorrow? That's an email.
that's an email. Yes, correct. And that a battalion chief at that level does not call for those kind of questions. That is a new engineer, that maybe his first week on and, hey, I got a light bulb out or I got a light out. What do you want me to do? That's
Okay.
what that's
O-
about.
Okay. Then you mentioned, which astounded me, you said there were, over the year, busiest year,
Mhm.
6 call outs.
6 call outs that actually go back in the field and work. Yes.
Okay. Please define for me, actually go out in the field and work. So that's, I'm the mechanic and I get a call and I have to go out, like you said, for the truck's stuck in the middle of the road.
Correct.
6 call outs in 365 days is less, it's 1% of the year.
And
I
Sorry.
would think at that rate, you wouldn't need anybody's number but yours, and you could then call your mechanic, because if only 6 calls are being made in a year, it seems like a whole lot of organizational time has been spent for 6 call outs in an entire year, with a very busy fire department over several thousand miles of area. Why would we need a call out sheet? For 6 call outs a year, it would be like the old Maytag repairman waiting for the phone to ring. And yet, we have 2 employees who said, I can't go anywhere because I have to be near the phone. That doesn't jive.
You're correct.
So which is it? Or where there's, I mean, you're talking about tow trucks
Mhm.
and 6 calls a year.
Is there a question coming?
Yeah, what, is it truly 6? No, is it truly 6 calls a year?
It's a truly 6 calls a year. Was the most calls that we received. Now, mind you, to ease your mind,
Okay,
when I first started this department, when the tones went off, you better get in the truck and follow the engine because it was going to break down. It took a lot of years to get our fleet to where it's at.
right.
Um, a lot of years and a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
So our fleet is, if I had to put a percentage on it, our fleet is 99% better than it was 15 years ago, 20 years ago.
Okay,
So 6 calls is not far-fetched.
okay.
I can run a report on how many calls go out, that we go out and actually go out and do work and create a work order. Because if you go out and do work, you create a work order. Since 21, mid of 21 until 24, the end of 24, 4 calls we had to go out and fix trucks.
Between how?
21 and 24.
In 3 years?
Yes.
You're telling me you only went out 4 times?
4 times. Actually got in the truck and went to work and fixed a vehicle. And I did 2 of them.
Okay.
We were getting way more efficient. What Matt Watson was telling you, we're getting way
Yeah,
more
no,
efficient.
I've noticed the equipment looks
Yeah,
sharp. The
yes.
equipment looks sharp. Then 2 quick things. On your county-owned phones.
Correct.
I assume there's caller ID. It isn't just a number pops up. So I would assume that Jeremy and Roy and anybody could say, okay, I know this is Battalion Chief so-and-so, or
Correct.
so they would immediately know in those 4 calls in 3 years. They would immediately know. Jeremy would have said, who is that? Because I haven't heard from him in 3 years. That's what you're saying.
Mhm.
Okay, I got my notes all here. Okay. Nope, that's it.
That's it.
Shut my mouth.
Thank you.
Mrs. Iverson? Okay. There was a comment quite some time ago by you that if I can remember it right, because my note doesn't go back that far. It was in an example of parts assistant going out and picking up some parts, and possibly the reason she had the phone was in case she needed to pick up something else. Did that ever, in your recollection, turn into overtime?
And no, in my recollection, no.
Say she had to go to Fresno at 4 o'clock, and
Yes, there has been instances where she had to go to Fresno at 4 o'clock and not get back until 5:30.
so there would be some overtime involved with that.
Correct.
And then that, by extrapolation, if she got another phone call for another part, could extend it even further.
Correct.
So that's what my question there was. So why would Ms. Diaz have a phone to take home if she's not required to do callbacks? I
That would-
understand the phone for when she's working and such.
Correct.
So why would she take the
That
phone
would
home?
be her own accord to take the phone home.
Okay. One that struck me kind of funny. Let me see if I can touch my mind to how that came about. You said something to the effect of nobody asked. And it was about the requirements of being on call, overtime, or the use of the phone. And I believe you said that it wasn't. But I think it's your, let me start that over. My opinion is you are the immediate supervisor, so it is your job to explain to them what their requirements are for getting overtime, using the phone, or getting callbacks.
Mhm.
But your comment was they didn't ask, so you didn't tell.
Oh, no, it wouldn't have been that I didn't tell.
But
It
you
was all
said you
explained to
didn't
them in the
tell,
hire, it was all explained in the hiring process that how that's all worked.
but what you testified to was that you didn't tell them something, some part of that, because they didn't ask about it. And that's what
Well,
brings my question.
I probably should have rephrased that the way I answered that. Nobody has ever come to me and said, do we have to take the phone home? Do we have to drive the truck home? Not once, and that I've had anybody come and ask me that.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Most of it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's gonna have to do.
Then can I ask?
Yes, go ahead.
When Chief Watson said, make a phone call, call you don't answer.
Mhm.
You call Jeremy, he's out enjoying an afternoon with Roy, so they don't answer.
Mhm.
And then the ECC or whoever, the dispatcher just starts dialing.
Mhm.
He did make that sound like that's more often than 3 phone calls or 4 phone calls in 1 year or in 3 years.
It was at one time, it was.
No, he made it sound like it was pretty normal. He didn't say, and years ago, we used to do that. He
Yeah,
said,
no,
this
it's,
is, that was my interpretation was, it just
Yeah.
sounded like that standard operating procedure. And I can imagine a dispatcher, as busy as they are, didn't get him. It's a push button world.
Mhm.
He didn't say 4 years or 5 years ago, and it's so much better now.
Okay, once again, do we have a question?
So my question, my question is, the frequency of the calls. 4 or in this 3-year, 4-year period.
Mhm.
It's that infrequent.
Yes.
Did it make you curious why they were questioning why they were on a calling list if they were getting a call a year?
Yeah, it's
And you didn't say to them, what's the big deal?
correct.
You didn't?
No, I did. I said, we don't go out near as much as we did. I would like it to where we didn't have to go out at all one day, but
Well, that's never
It's-
gonna happen.
it's never gonna happen. So we try to do the maintenance and we try to keep the trucks online and keep them in service. And every once in a while, you have one break.
Okay.
You know, cars nowadays.
I just wanted to make sure I
Yeah,
understood you.
Yeah,
And thank you for your service.
thank you.
Anybody
You're
else?
welcome.
Okay, any redirect? Ross?
I don't have any.
None.
Witness is excused.
Correct.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we got about 6 minutes. We have one more witness, correct?
One
Yeah.
more witness and I can be quick about it. But I don't know. I mean, if
You're gonna want closing arguments too.
we're gonna want closing.
And,
Can we do that on your Tuesday?
well, it kind of looks to me like in reality, we're not going to finish this tonight and even have a chance to deliberate. I know that the commission is meeting next Tuesday for regular business. And you already said that next Tuesday did not work for you. Or about side of it. So if anybody has objections or has ideas of what days they could come. It's, the other option is we go another half hour to 45 minutes to an hour.
I could live with it.
Beverly?
Tonight.
Hey, Joe, would you be all right staying? For a little longer to see if we can wrap this up today? We don't have to deliberate today. Get through with
Either way, I'm
parties. Not tonight. No, we could do that Tuesday. But, and that'll be Tuesday, but it just let the two parties finish their job here.
May I
That-
say something?
Yes,
So in addition to the county's last witness, I believe we have to do our oral closing arguments.
correct.
I know at least from my side, my argument is going to take a long time because I have a lot to say and a lot of points to cover. And so I anticipate that that by itself will be 30 minutes of me talking at you. And I know you've heard me talking for
Talk
4 days
faster.
straight. And so I can definitely do that. There's just a lot to cover and I want to make sure I'm thorough. And so from my perspective, even if we extend tonight 45 minutes, an hour, it's not going to be sufficient time to conclude with the witness and get arguments in.
Okay,
I had previously, I suggested to council that I would be fine with submitting, I know you all typically hear oral arguments. I could submit my written argument to you all after the close of the evidentiary portion of this hearing for you all to consider before your deliberation. Alternatively, if I need to come back to present my oral argument when we have more time, I'm happy to do that as well. I just don't think it could happen today,
Today.
within an hour.
on the closing.
That's correct.
Okay. On advice of our council, I think we're gonna try to push it by trying to do next 45 minutes. That's gonna push the issue a little too much and we might get in too much of a hurry. And it might be better served for everybody if we don't want to do that necessarily another day. So if you could check your calendars real quick, see what you two have as availability, then we'll try to see what we can do to make sure that works.
Are there particular days of the week that the commission can meet or not meet?
Well, we are meeting Tuesday, next Tuesday.
Right, right. So just in general, are you all available? If
Not-
you're available
not-
Monday?
Okay, let's hear theirs first. and
No,
then-
I don't care about there.
Well, she's asking-
Well, I do.
You have church.
I do. I'm in charge.
She's asking, so we're all kind of collaborating.
I-
Well, Wednesdays work best for me.
Wait.
If they're asking, Wednesdays are best for me. I'll just throw that out
When you
there.
said Wednesday is best?
I
How does that-
I can't do Wednesday. I'll double check Tuesday.
And are we looking at next week or we're trying to get this as soon as possible?
Are we okay Tuesday? Because it'll
We
be-
already have.
well, I
we
know,
both-
but we don't have it agendized already and noticed. Yes,
If it happens on Tuesday, if you're gonna agree on Tuesday, we already have a special hearing. I will post it on Monday.
and it'd be an addendum.
Correct.
So
The council's both available on Thursday and And the union is available, and
Everybody is,
is Thursday a possibility next?
commissioners, it's Thursday a
I'm
possibility,
checking now.
which would be the 30th. Oh,
No, the
the
first.
first,
The first.
as long as it's not Friday. I think so. Now, that begs the question, Veronica, would we move our
Yes, Commissioner?
the
The-
meeting from Tuesday to Thursday?
My understanding is that what you're gonna be hearing on Tuesday has to go also to the Board of Supervisors, so they're trying to hit
They're
that
trying to hurry that
meeting
up.
mark.
Okay. So that means we're gonna have two meetings.
Correct.
Okay. Leave it alone then. That's the reason we had a special meeting, because of the supervisors.
Thursday's not on.
Not? Okay, Thursday's not working.
Well,
Thursday's-
I was communicating.
Yeah. So next option. Yeah.
Okay, Friday the
And you know, as I surveyed the room, I understand the disappointment in the extension of this process, and you know, we're now getting into 1 or 2 weeks down the road. But you know, it is our obligation to not rush this process or give anybody not give everybody, both sides, the opportunity to fully utilize that time. And so we're trying to mitigate that by finding a more appropriate date. So please bear with us.
Cinco de Mayo.
Monday the 5th.
Tom, do we still have, the one for Tuesday?
Right, but Mr. McCann can't be here Tuesday and various others. That's the
Yeah,
problem.
but
with
we
that.
do have a meeting for
Correct.
Tuesday. Okay, well, any other time?
But they can't,
But they
so far
can't.
this next week is shot. It's not working for next week.
Days and days.
To what degree? But that's during the day. Hey, I have a job. I got a
Hey,
job. I
let me
work
go.
day and night. Come on, suck it up.
We have staff.
I'm
the
s-
boss.
I'm sorry, it's still recording live and you guys, the discussion, I'm gonna put it on pause. So you
Okay,
guys could just deliberate and talk about the schedule. That's okay,
okay,
Commissioner.
but leave our mics open.
Well, so
on.
they could hear, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Do we do a motion on that? That extra day?
So moved.
Since we- Okay, so we have a motion for continuance of this hearing added on to our business meeting on April 29th. And it will follow we'll do our business meeting first at 5:30 and then continue the hearing shortly after that.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Atwood?
Yes.
Commissioner Perez?
Yes.
Commissioner Iverson?
Yes.
Commissioner Rios? Commissioner, Fry?
Yes.
We have a 5-0 vote to extend the hearing for this additional hearing for the
And we
29th.